I'm obese, shoot me in the belly.
Look at all the space I'm creating, everybody!
Bad monkey, bad monkey. Oh, you got you baited so hard. I don't think I can handle any more of this bot gameplay.
Spylo.
So let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, I'm wearing a green shirt today. So I know that was something that was on like a really contested topic for quite some time, but yes, I am wearing a green shirt today. I know that I was kind of keeping you guys on edge for a while, but figured we'd address the elephant in the room and get it all sorted out. So backbone's popping off. I'm proud. Of course I'm proud. See, I'm going to be alt-tabbing back and forth very secretly, checking the score line. Y'all are going to have to keep me updated. But yeah, today we're going to be doing a Rate the Roll with SVB. We've done Rate the Roll DPS. We've done Rate the Roll support. We're going to do Rate the Roll tank. I'm really excited for this. If you guys haven't tuned into this before, expect greatness. Not just because I'm on your screen, but because the entire idea is a lot of fun to do. And we've had a lot of fun. So I'm really, really excited. We're trying to get this done sooner rather than later. In other words, we're thinking like, maybe we'll do it in a week or something. Like, we need to get it done now before we need like any crazy patch changes hit. So I'm going to give SVB a call. And then we're going to get this started. So basically, well, I'll wait for him to hop on before we before we discuss it. Because obviously, like we'll have to figure out like what exactly are we doing. But we'll try and get that done like all at once for efficiency's sake. Hey Dragonfly, Anima, it's that's actually pale olive, more on the gray side. Okay, listen, I know it was a joke. It was a joke. I was saying I got a haircut, but it wasn't. I wasn't going to address that, and that was the real elephant in the room. You get it? And I'm sure you're making a joke as well, but I'm doing my best to absolutely ruin your joke. That's the way we do things. You're not humorous. I'm humorous. There's like a hierarchy that you got to get in order, okay? Sorry, just so we're aware. And then I'm just waiting on him to let me know he's ready, and then we're gonna get Rick rolling. He's busy looking at the experimental patch notes. Hair check? There's nothing to check. Like there's nothing. I couldn't brush it if I wanted to. It'd be like running a comb through a hair, like a toothbrush. So Bobbin, you spent channel points and got nothing out of it. So I hope you're happy. XD. Oh gosh, what are we, like 2008? Oh gosh, I'm cringing for future you. I'm on your behalf. You're welcome. Experimental risk is so much fun. I believe it. Monkey. I played just a little bit, like a couple of games, and my opinion is that Monkey and Soldier might be the strongest ones. Holy crap. Our Bastion's really strong as well. Holy crap. Headshot Tactical Visor is nuts. Absolutely nuts. Because Tactical Visor is like, if you stand behind shield, stand behind cover, it is not going to do anything. But even if you don't, you still have a window of time before you can get behind cover. Headshot Tactical Visor cuts that time in half. It's like a flank soldier with visor. It's just GG's. It's over. It's just over. Zen was a lot of fun, but it wasn't like crazy. Who else was like really strong? Like I said, Bastion felt really strong. Zarya felt pretty strong. Like that was a quick way. Oh, we're going. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I was jawing off about the experimental changes, which I'm pretty sure you were doing as well.
I was doing the exact same thing. I actually you timed it well. I just was done. So
okay, perfect. Well, good to hear from you, man. I was gonna say good to see you, but I've been seeing a little bit of you off and on. But good to hear from you, man.
Yeah. Now, likewise, man. How you doing? How you doing? It's been a while since we did our last one, but hope you're good.
Yeah, doing fine, just keeping up with all the stuff. I figured I was gonna most people in our chat I'm sure know exactly what to expect, but I figured before we actually start, do you want to do the TLDR like last time? Like what are we actually trying to accomplish here?
Sure. So this is Rate the Roll. This is the third and final episode of our series that Spylo has devised. Essentially, we will go through each of the heroes in a specific role, and we're going to talk about things like skill floor, skill ceiling, value floor, value ceiling. If you want a little explanation of what these are, skill floor being to kind of access this hero. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. I thought that was a question for me. I was like, oh, I guess, sure. But no, okay,
you can go ahead. Go ahead if you want.
You go ahead. prefer you.
Okay, well, I was just gonna quickly run through it just to say that skill floor being to kind of play this hero to access this hero at like a base level of competence. You know, how difficult is it? How much skill does it require? And skill ceiling is to kind of master this hero. How much do you really need to pour into this hero to get the maximum out of this hero? Value floor basically being, again, when played at a base level of competence, how much value will this hero give you? So this is very meta dependent, and we had a lot of these change, or we had a lot of asterisks in our previous episodes, which we were like, well, based on the meta, this is their strength, but it could change. I think supports had the most of that probably, and tanks will definitely have that as well. Value ceiling, again, when played at a competent level, how much value will this character give? Like, what is the max value this character will give? Buffs, nerfs, simply, does this character need a buff? Does this character need a nerf? And fun against, the most subjective category, basically, is this hero fun to go up against? And these are all on a scale of 4, which people are perpetually confused by. So let me remind again that this is on a scale of 1 to 4. 4 being the best, highest, 1 being the lowest. Did I miss anything, Spilo?
I don't think so. The 1 to 4 scale, man, it's like, part of me is like, man, we should have changed it, but also part of me is like, well, like 5 might have been too much, 10 was definitely too much. That would have been a disaster to try and get through, but you know, you guys got to be patient with us.
Well, it wouldn't be our unique series. It wasn't like an awkward rating system that people are constantly confused by.
It matches our personalities, so it's perfect.
Exactly.
So, okay, well, I guess we're gonna get started. Let me get my full screen set up here and make sure I'm on the proper scene. Okay, I think we're all set. And then, okay, so we start off, and like when we did the DPS, I was like, man, this is gonna take all day. It did take quite a long time. And then we got to supports, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be just a few minutes. It'll be like half the time. It was basically the same amount of time. And I have a feeling it's going to be the same with tanks, even though there's fewer tanks than there are DPS. And we start off with a doozy, D.Va, is very popular. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, before we begin, what I would love is to get your perspective on what you think generally the tank meta is, like broad strokes at the pro level.
Okay. Well,
just as a reference point.
Okay, so pro meta right now is very map dependent, but it's also like region dependent. And I'm not sure if that's because, personally, I think that we might be at the best raw balance state that we have been in a long time. As I pull up another window. But the tricky thing is that we don't know how long the meta takes to develop, right? So I think we're in a great balance state, but it might also just be that we're in a state of flux right now, and we haven't had a time or enough pro meta to know exactly what's the strongest meta right now. I think obviously, unquestionably, Brawl is strong right now. Is it the best? I don't know. We also unquestionably know that Dive is also relatively strong right now, with several of the Winston buffs. A couple of the DPS nerfs like Echo have helped Dive come back into state of decency at least. And then even spam, like obviously we're not exactly playing Orisa Sigma double shield everywhere, but we have seen it on some maps, we have seen it in some places, and it's certainly at least decent in some locations. And even if you're playing, even if you're not exactly playing the Orisa Sigma meta, you're still playing some variation of spam. So in terms of tanks, I think Ryan, D.Va, Zarya, Winston are all very strong right now. Orisa Sigma, not so much. Ball is not weak, but he's not exactly strong. He was hit pretty decent. Like the boot nerf was not crazy, but he's at the pro level just not as quite as popular, I guess would be safe to say.
And then there's the black sheep of Roadhog, which we'll get to, I guess.
Right. Roadhog is just kind of an outlier. He fills a very specific niche, but he is not very good and hasn't been good really since they overbuffed him.
Yep. Yeah, so with that in mind, I think I will defer to Spilo on kind of the highest level. I only know what I know of watching Spilo videos, which are great, by the way. Check them out, ! Spilo. So I'm going to try and speak for more of the ladder experience and the average experience if I can be so presumptuous.
Sure.
So D.Va then, shall we begin with D.Va?
Sure, absolutely. Okay, do you want to start with the floor, and I'll go take the ceiling after?
Yeah. So I'm thinking about this now. What's kind of giving me pause on this one is that you see a lot of divas, or at least historically you would. I think actually in the last couple of years there's been a decline. I'm sure you remember as well, Spilo, like maybe like 2 years ago, before Sig got put in the game, or and Sig Orisa became like this huge thing. I feel like there was pretty much never a meta where diva wasn't a good pick, and for that reason, I think there was always diva players, always divas everywhere. But now this doesn't necessarily go in skill floor, but I actually have maintained for the longest time the diva is one of the hardest heroes in the game, at least to master. Now skill floor though, how much value can you get out of just kind of flying around and shooting stuff? This is tough. I actually think it's still decently high, like mid tier. I'd say mid tier skill floor, because I think that she's now individually weaker than she was before, and it's very easy to farm a shit diva, I think. So I think that maybe like a 2.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like we have to look also like what are we defining as base competency, and I would say just general, not feeding your brains out, not AFKing down main, not dying. Basically, I mean, the real big thing with Diva is just basic positioning. And not wasting your boosters. The cooldowns, like Matrix is a little tricky. Micro Missiles isn't very hard. Bomb isn't even that terribly hard to understand or master. But boy, oh boy, is positioning hard.
Yeah,
it is very hard, and it's so punishing. And like we look at like skill floors, like how much value if you just get the base competency, how hard is it to get there? Like, and just existing as Diva is just not very good. You do need to have some level of base competency. So to me, I think skill floor is at least a 2, maybe higher. Are
we going to refer back to our previous?
Yeah, I'm looking back at our previous, and to me, like we ranked. To me, I see a lot of similarities between her and Lucio, because when we were talking about Lucio, it was about how a lot of Lucios just exist, right? They just exist. They heal, amp, they beat. They don't really ride around a whole lot. They, whatever. But we described that as not being Lucio's floor. It's when you start to get into wall riding and start to kind of maneuver and manage the battlefield, that's what we described as skill floor, right? So to me, I think I hold Diva to that same tier. Yes, you can just AFK on mid, but that's not even anywhere close to how the hero is supposed to be played, right? That's like saying, like there's an apartment, there's a house, and there's a mansion. If you're a Diva sitting AFK in main, you're a cardboard box underneath a bridge. Like, it doesn't even resemble anything that's near the ceiling at all. So to me, I think, like, yes, it is very easy to pick up Diva and to stand AFK in main, but I think that's very easy to be ineffective that way, and I would not say that's floor. So to me, at least, I would say a very solid 2.5, maybe a low 3, but I'm open to your opinions on that.
Yeah, I think this has got, like, her floor has gotten higher as she's kind of gotten less in individual strength, and I think people like Sigma as well coming into the game made her a little bit less appealing, let's say.
Yep.
I think like, yeah, it's just like previously I think you could get away with more stupid shit with Diva, and I think for that reason the skill floor would have been lower, but I think yeah, the way the game has kind of developed, I think 2.5 is probably reasonable. I think 2.5 is, I think there's enough there for her to still be, there's like enough mobility and HP and the second life in baby Diva form to allow people to get away with mistakes, but it's still very difficult and very tricky, I think.
Yeah, agreed. For skill ceiling, I think it has to be at least a 3.5.
Yes,
mechanically, one of the more demanding tanks. Not the most demanding, I think you can argue that. She's more demanding than, I'd say, Roadhog, Reinhardt, probably more demanding than Orisa, probably a little more demanding than Zarya as well, or it's close. But she's one of the more demanding tanks, maybe not the most. Cooldown management, micro missiles isn't a big one, but it is something. Matrix is very important and very difficult. Booster is pretty difficult as well. Bomb has a little bit of a curve. I mean, it's not crazy difficult, but it is harder than a lot of the other tank ultimates to kind of understand and use. And then as we mentioned earlier, positioning, man. Holy smokes. Positioning, you could write a 12-book youth series, like multi-chaptered series on just her positioning. It's unbelievable. Knowing when to be where, and when you need to peel, when you need to aggress, what positions on the map, how to not feed. I think for ceiling with Diva is unquestionably has to be a 3.5, but I'm not sure if she deserves 4. I'm kind of on the fence.
Yeah, so I think, let's see, we put Tracer on 4. I think Tracer's the only hero actually on 4 right now. Widowmaker 3.82.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is tough. I feel like if you had asked me who the toughest heroes are to master in the game, I would probably say Tracer and Diva. I'd probably say I think the reason Diva is so difficult is that there's no, I think similar to with Tracer, there's no limit to how good you can get a Tracer, right? But that's largely mechanical. Whereas with Diva, it's like how good you get with her is infinite because it's always based on like a decision that you should be making.
Yep.
And that decision is constantly changing, like by the meta, by the heroes, by the map, by just within the game itself. It's always like there's 5 decisions you could make, and they're all of varying degrees of efficacy.
Yep. Yeah, it's tough for me because you compare the mechanics, and Tracer's unquestionably significantly mechanically hard. Even though Diva is mechanically like a more difficult tank, she's nowhere near Tracer. And Tracer, even though her positioning and stuff is relatively basic, there is a lot of context behind it. That being said, Diva is definitely harder in that role. She's definitely more difficult with positioning. Because I don't know, because like when I compare her to Tracer, it's pretty close. I would say probably slightly below, but it's pretty darn close. Like you could just tell, like even right now, you'll watch contenders or some of these Overwatch League show matches, and it's like who's a good Diva and who's not. Like you can just feel it. It's just a very fluid motion of being at the right place at the right time. I honestly have no idea. Don't know if it's 3.5 or 4.
I kind of want to put her above Widowmaker, but we did the awkward thing of putting Widow at 3.8 and 3.82 to be precise.
Yeah.
We made a problem for ourselves there.
Yeah. I think let's put her at 4 for now, but revisit it as we go down the list.
Yeah, we can reserve judgment.
Yes.
I think the other thing I want to add to this is that I don't remember the last time I played a game in ladder and thought I had a good Diva in my team. Yeah. And that's how like rare it is to see a good Diva.
Yeah. That's where it's gonna get really interesting on the value floor, because I think. Yeah, I'll talk about that when we get there though, because I want you to go first on this.
Yeah, value floor. This is a bit tricky. So let's think. I'm thinking like I'm visualizing like a base level Diva. Has good competence on all the basic mechanical elements of it. I think if you're doing like smart stuff, if you're flying to the right targets, shutting down the right kind of threats, I think there's good value to be had from Diva.
Yeah.
Let me compare to some of the stuff we've gotten. So we had like Mercy 2.25, Zen 2.25. Yeah, I think like a 2 seems reasonable. If BAP is like a 2.5, I think then Diva probably like a 2.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. A 2 for Diva, because she sometimes can feel really, really trash to play with, but I've always been in the opinion that I think Diva is one of the most incorrectly played heroes in lower ranks. I think she's just completely fun. Like there's an AFK on main, I'm gonna bleed ult charge, and then just get demacked over and over and over again. It's not just the peeling that's missing, but it's like the map control in general. Like if I'm playing Diva, playing with a Diva, I'm like you said, I very rarely feel like, hey, this Diva's actually do what she's supposed to do. It usually feels like, where is my Diva? She's just shooting shields the entire game. But that being said, she doesn't get a lot of value doing that. That's why you have so many, I think, gold, plat, silver, Diva one tricks just stuck. They're not going anywhere because they're not going to be able to just like get out of that with that playstyle. So just existing as Diva is, when you compare that to like maybe like even a Sigma or a Zarya in that category, I think just existing as Diva, you don't get a lot done. So even when you do hit that floor, have a base low positioning, not amazing. Not amazing, I would say. So I think 2 is fair. We'll obviously have to revisit this.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, I think the most common thing I see, like you said, I think I see like spam, left click on shield, Reinhardt shield, spam, E, micro missile. Someone calls out Ryan's half, Diva boosters in, gets DMAC. Like that's like typical Diva experience.
Yeah. The only reason I'd say that she's not lower, like 1.5, is because we are defining skill or value floor is the same thing as skill floor. So our imaginary floor Diva here does have some decent positioning, so I imagine her to get something done. Also, Bomb is a pretty easy ultimate to use.
Yes, and that's why you see so many R Overwatch bomb highlight clips.
Oh gosh, yeah, the top voted over and over and over again. Hey, another
Always,
5K
always.
of me planting the bomb on the floor.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's like
thrilling.
the best location sometimes is the most obvious ones, like a caption to that effect,
Yeah,
basically.
something clickbait. I'm like, oh gosh, please, who actually enjoys these? Anyway, value ceiling for D.Va. Obviously, this is, as we defined, is the most like flexible. In other words, this one could go up and down very heavily depending on the meta. Right now, D.Va is very high in the value ceiling tier. Any map where there is any sort of significant high ground, D.Va is going to get value. You can, in brawl metas and top 500, pro ranked play, D.Va is very good. Obviously, I think a question that gets commonly asked is, why is D.Va played over Zarya? Well, 2 reasons why. She does a lot more than Zarya pressure-wise on maps that have any sort of high ground, because she can do more like backline and back of Rhine pressure by using her boosters to take high ground. Zarya can start on high ground, but she can't, like, in the middle of the fight, take that high ground. So that means D.Va's able to
take it, yeah.
Right. In addition, D.Va, like, a big part of the meta right now is like McCree flanks. And D.Va's able to shut those down a lot easier than Zarya. And lastly, D.Va can eat Grav. She can eat High Noon. She can eat Blizzard. She can eat BAP window. There's a lot that she can, basically a lot of the ultimates that are meta right now, she can deal with. Tracer's very good right now, so she can deal with Pulse Bomb. So a very well played D.Va can get a lot done. As well as if you're going to play Dive, which is another fairly common meta, not as much in the West, but on certain maps, D.Va's not, like, Zarya was very, 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 very common. Because of the threat of CC, but with D.Va's recent buffs, with Winston's recent buffs, with Echo's recent nerfs, basically indirectly D.Va received more of a buff in Dive, so she's also okay in Dive. You'll still see mostly double bubble, but Winston D.Va Dive is not as bad. So I think value ceiling right now is certainly probably around at least a 3, maybe a 3.5.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And again, like, if Brig goes down in power level, right, then the appeal of Zarya goes down
Yes.
as well in a dive, and then D.Va becomes more appealing all of a sudden because she can just eat more stuff.
Yep.
Which
Absolutely.
technically infinite stuff. Stuff.
Right. Theoretically.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think 3 probably is more
Sure.
reasonable and safe to put.
Yep.
I think just lest we go overboard and then
Sure. We can always
realize
come
later
back.
that we went a bit.
Sure.
Yeah, we can always come back, bump it up if we need.
Yep.
Okay, buffs and nerfs. I don't really think that there's anything.
No.
I don't really want to mess too much with the state of things as they are right now. I think largely things are fine. Like you said, I think largely we're in the best balance patch we've been in for maybe a long time.
I think if you look back across to our buffs, nerfs with other heroes, there's a couple of DPS heroes that have received slight nerfs. And then if we look at our supports, mostly defined, so maybe a very, very slight nerf. I know that recently they increased her armor, maybe revert that. But that would be contingent upon we see obviously maybe a small Ashe nerf that we look for, another Echo nerf, like just basically some other things that we were looking at. But there's no urgency with that at all, and that might not even be necessary. I think you have to pay, like, obviously, like supports, I think tanks are so heavily meta dependent that there are very few times that, D.Va's just so strong that she defines the meta. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So
yeah, those days are long gone.
Yeah, it's almost always like very rarely is that it's like, okay, we're playing Dive is strong right now because of this here, like Winston got buffed and this got buffed, and so you have to play so and so hero with us, and that's just how it is. So I think probably leave her as there is, as she is. Excuse me.
Yeah. I think one thing people often get a misconception of is they think that tanks often are defining the meta, when usually tanks are responding to whatever the greatest threat is. Like the tank meta is usually defined by whatever the strongest thing is.
Yep. I mean,
and if it's like
tanks
go ahead.
Sometimes define the meta, but it's been a while since.
Sometimes, it's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while. I think at least recent metas. I mean, Goats obviously is a great example of like tanks and supports define the meta, but I think since 222, it's been like, I suppose the double shield was the last one as well, because it was just obnoxious how much HP there was in those shields. But Since
Yep.
then, it's been a lot of like, oh well, hit scanner really strong. We need stuff that stops it.
Yep.
Oh, there's a lot of burst damage. We need stuff that doesn't die.
Yep.
Or in this
Yep.
case, it's like
And
we
really
need to
towards
prevent range threat.
right, and really towards the end of Double Shield, it was also like these tanks don't just instantly get poked out constantly.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but definitely towards it's like at the start of Double Shield, it was certainly Sigma being OP and Orisa Halt being OP and things like that. Okay, fun against. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think D.Va's particularly obnoxious. I don't think there's anything about her kit that's like dumb.
No.
I think the worst thing you can get is getting diffed by a baby D.Va, but we've all been there. We've all been there. Her hitbox is horrible to hit.
Yeah, at the
But
at the higher tiers, I think the Matrix is certainly annoying. I think the big thing is that with the 1 second cooldown, is it one? Chat, correct me. Is it 1 second cooldown now, or is it 2?
I think so. Or no, I think it was the 1 second in the pro patch. Is it? Let's look this up.
I know. I gotta look this up.
D.Va Overwatch. Have a look. Defense Matrix.
2 seconds. Oh no, yeah, it is 1 second.
Yeah.
It's 1 second.
Cooldown 1 second. Yeah, duration is up to 2 seconds.
Right, and that's why I'm not giving her a 3.5 because that like if you get play up against a really really good D.Va, she can shut down a lot. And there's it can feel like there's not a lot of counterplay to it because there's a lot of cooldowns like on a nade, for example, even like things like Dynamite, where they they take a little bit to get there if you're positioned properly. So the counter, it can be very difficult to play around. And obviously it did make things a little easier. And whenever let's put it this way, when people are out skilled, generally there's a little less salt there, but when you lose because like that's just it's easier for them to do that, then I think people get salty. And I think reducing the Matrix cooldown to 1 flat second definitely was like, man, what am I supposed to do that? But even it doesn't even have to be good. She can just like, there's no Matrix management really necessary there. Obviously that's an exaggeration. But I think at the pro level anyway, D.Va became a lot more forgiving in that regard. So I would say I would say 3 on the nose for me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say 3 as well. I think that's fair. I was just gonna add that for those who maybe haven't been playing Overwatch for the longest time, this was a lot worse in like the start of Overwatch when it was like defense matrix seemed infinite. That I think at that time, D.Va was one of the most hated heroes because of how you could basically eat an entire attack visor with D.Va's matrix. That's how obnoxious it was. So we have gotten to a good state where it's like a lot less obnoxious than it was. But yeah, I can understand like at a high level, it's just like, goddamn, she's eating everything I throw. So what the fuck?
Yeah. Okay. Orisa.
Okay. Horse Lady. So I think it's your turn now on the skill floor. So go ahead.
So skill floor, I don't think shield is particularly hard to use. It's not easy, but it's not crazy complex. Her gun is a little awkward. It's easier than it used to be, but it is a little awkward. Fortify, I actually think my gut's actually telling me 2.5 actually.
Really? Go ahead, talk us through why you think it's sort of same as D.Va.
So the reason why is because her playstyle, like if we treat, again, the floor is being played quote-unquote halfway properly, it's changed. It's changed since the shield nerf, and it's changed since the Fortify buff. Because not even the recent Fortify buff, I'm talking about the cooldown. Like you just get it more often now.
Yes, yeah.
To where Orisa is required to play a lot more active. And obviously the lion's majority of her value comes from her ability to land good halts. Gone are the days where, we're playing, I don't know, I can vault first attack and they're running Torbjorn, Junkrat, Orisa defense, and that Orisa's just going to stay in there. Her shield's never going to break, right? Shields break really fast. You have to be accurate with your halts, and you have to be able to manage your fortify, otherwise you get busted down. I would say probably a 2 or a 2.5, certainly not below a 2. And I know that's that's an unpopular opinion, but I think she's a little harder to get value out of than some people think.
Yeah, I've actually had a recent shift on my opinion on Orisa as well. I played her a little bit recently on ladder.
Yeah.
And I was actually very surprised by she's like it's been one of those very slow and general changes. Like it hasn't come in like one big patch. But like over the changes that they've made, at first I was like, wow, they made her shield like paper thin. This shield is like near garbage now. It's like barely lasts. And then, the Fortify changed, and everyone was like, what are you doing? Like, Fortify, no headshot, this is crazy. But yeah, having put my hands on her, like, she's a lot more brawly, she's a lot more active, she's a lot more fun, I would say, if I can
Yep.
be subjective. I think she's a lot more, like, there's a lot more damage and lethal potential.
Yep.
So I definitely think she's a lot in a healthier state. She's not like AFK shield bot that she was.
Agreed.
That being said, I still think that the nature of Fortify in particular is one of the most forgiving cooldowns that there
Yes.
is. Like, it's a very hard get out of jail free card, because not
Yep.
only does it stop headshots now and stop you from getting CC'd and damage reduction, there's a lot that lets you get out. So
Yeah.
I think two is
Okay.
reasonable.
I think also, as well, as you look at her ultimate as well, it's not again, not just to press it easy value, but it is
Yeah,
it's as close
yeah.
to it press it get easy value as there is for a tank ultimate.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the big complaints about Orisa is her bongo and like how boring it is to use. But yeah, it is. Hey, we're in a team fight. I place this here, and like as long as you don't stand it out in the open, it's gonna get a lot of value. It's one of the most underrated ultimates in my opinion in the game, and it's not particularly hard to use either.
Well, wasn't it? There was a stat. I don't know how in date the stat is, but I remember when Orisa was being played, it was like Supercharger had the highest fight win percentage of any ultimate, right?
Yep, it did. Even higher than Rally. Yeah, higher than Rally. In a double shield matchup, Orisa's bongo was the strongest ultimate when it came to winning the fights.
Yeah, I think literally all it is put it behind the corner, and it's just like, it's free.
50% damage boost. It's unbelievable. Okay.
Skill ceiling.
What do you think?
So bearing in mind, this is better than it was.
Yeah.
I still don't see it necessarily being that high. I still don't think there's necessarily. Although I think the thing about new Orisa is there's probably things that we haven't tapped into yet, and I'm a lot more conscious of this now than maybe I ever was with the way I've seen certain tanks being played. Like the Cloudy Ryan is a great example of like a very unique play style of a character that's otherwise pigeonholed in. So I think there's definitely. I actually don't think the flank Orisa is as memey as people think it is.
No.
I think it's actually quite viable.
No.
I think it's actually quite strong. I think more people should do it. I'm gonna try. Actually, I'm actually eager to get my hands on Orisa for the first time in a long time. On the next play ladder, I actually want to experiment more with Orisa. I think there's more to tap into her.
People don't understand that like the tank's job is to create space, and with Orisa, she's very strong at creating space and a longer sight line. And if you can do on a flank without dying, feeding, or within team LOS, I think it's certainly worth trying. Obviously, there's he shall not be named the Orisa OTP who is infamous for the flanking. I don't think he was a very good ambassador for exploring better ways of playing Orisa, but I still think that like if you're looking like there's like it's not, you're not there to protect your team. Like you're not with a 600 HP shield.
Yes, exactly.
That's just not how the game works with tanks. So I think there's something in there. Also something as well that is always separated good from bad Orisas is Halt. It's one of the more difficult tank cooldowns to use. It's a little easier now than it used to be because they actually made it worse. So a lot of the funny, really difficult, tricky, cool little halts that you used to be able to do are now unviable, which I think is good. They're really stupid, but if you played up against a good Orisa, it was like what like every other fight. And obviously like there's mechanics. There's a lot of mechanics. Aiming is very important with Orisa. And obviously Fortify management as well is something tricky as well. So I actually think that 2.5 or a 3 for me, definitely no lower than 2.5.
Yeah, I think this one I'll have to assess where we land some of the other tanks on before we maybe come back. I think 2.5 was my gut instinct.
Sure.
But I think the 3 is there if and when we kind of figure out this other aspect of Orisa, because I think the irony is that flank Orisa now is more viable than ever was because of the way she's been changed, and it's more arguably necessary to do it occasionally. I think actually like the same way that we'll get to Ryan next. I think you now have to do that as Reinhardt. I think you have to do that as Orisa now to actually get proper value out of her. So
for sure.
I think 2.5 is reasonable. And we can maybe bump that up. Bump that up.
Yep. Yeah.
Now value floor, go ahead.
Pretty darn high for a tank, I think. I mean, just existing, the shield's not great, but you do have range damage. You do have shield. Fortify is not as hard as some cooldowns to use. Halt is something that I think is probably like you're not going to get a lot done. Obviously, this is a little meta dependent, even if it is like plat or gold or diamond, whatever we define as floor. But I mean, it's not many tanks that are going to be better than Orisa when it comes to me playing at a base tier. Certainly not in terms of like picking up the hero. So I would probably say 2.5 or 3, I think, for me.
Yeah. Let me consider this. Because it's like this funny mix of like you can't go wrong, but you could also do nothing, and that's another like thing that you could very well do.
Yeah.
But I think considering like base competence, I think the value floor 2.5 I think is reasonable. I think slightly more than D.Va.
Sure. We also have to keep in mind as well that we're playing her on, like, let's say 80% of maps. If we can avoid a couple of maps, maybe like a King's Row first defense, King's Row, like just King's Row defense in general, then that would help her out a little bit. Because there's a lot of maps where high ground and sightlines are abusable. A lot of maps. But so if you can just avoid a couple, you're happy with Orisa.
Yes, actually, absolutely. Basically the brawly maps where she could get farmed. Sure. Value ceiling. Yes, and again, this is something that I think is we're not going to put an asterisk, I don't think, but I think this is very much asterisk because I think that right now she doesn't really have that firm a spot. Like if we're talking 80% of maps, there are still like certain maps where you're like, yeah, you can play Orisa on this map, but there's no real meta spot for her right now, so that automatically kind of hinders your value ceiling.
No, there's not a lot for her.
But I think but we might be looking at a world where people maybe figure her out and start running some shit that makes her seem more appealing.
Maybe.
Although I think there's a disincentive to do that because the way the pro game works, it's like who's gonna really bother experimenting with Orisa right now?
Right. You know that she's not oppressively strong, so even if you did find a set, so it's like it's sunk time investment. It's like, do I really want to sink 50, 100 hours trying to figure this out when I can just play this hero and already know I'm going to do fine at it? I think value ceiling is pretty low right now, probably around like a 1.5. Again, pro meta. So I think that she's not very good against Brawl in most situations. I think a lot of times where you do play spam, where there are long sightlines, Ball is in a lot of ways just better and kind of has been for a little while at creating space, especially considering how often we've seen heroes like Echo and Tracer. There's just more opportunity to get value of those heroes when you're running it with a Ball combo. And even like, for example, if you're trying to run snipers synergize pretty well with Orisa, but in a lot of ways they synergize with Ball even better. Because running Ball is just a constant disruption, creates so many opportunities, so many distractions, and if they try and mirror you, then if you don't have a Ball, like the other sniper is just constantly having to deal with the enemy sniper and the enemy Ball at the same time. So like Ball, I think synergizes on most spam maps a little better than Orisa for right now.
Yeah, and of course with the Halt nerfs that you were talking about as well, that combo, like basically it's very, very nearly impossible to combo stuff with Halt reliably now because of like how quickly it travels. You can't really line up dynamites or obviously the OG Halt hook or Halt rock, and
the pull range is
all these things
much weaker. Much weaker.
It used to be that you were nearly like, sometimes there were situations where you're like, I just can't dodge this Halt if we don't eat it, and now it's like like there's barely going to pull them around the corner kind of thing.
I mean, you could literally pull them around corners back in the day, and that is no longer the case. So, I'd probably say 1.5 for right now. But I don't think she's a trash tier hero right now. I just think that, if, for example, if we all of a sudden started seeing like Sigma buffed a little bit, she might just jump to a 2.5 almost instantly. Okay.
I think I think there's that place hasn't been found. I do think there could be a spot. I think maybe, who knows when Overwatch 2 comes out, but I think she will thrive in that Overwatch 2 kind of environment.
Sure.
Where brawling tanks is like more the play anyways, or theoretically, because I think she's actually a little bit underrated in that aspect. Like she's chonky, basically. That's the feeling I got. I was like, I just don't die on this hero. I just can't die on this hero.
Yeah. I think for her to be fully like comfortable and more flexible maps, we'd have to see an ultimate that's more interactive. Yes. Less static. Her static ultimate really hurts her in terms of running her with hybrid comps, because even when we have seen her in quote unquote brawlier comps with like the Orisa Sig Brig, it was still playing very static around set corners, because if you push past a corner, well, what's your bongo gonna do? So probably will need a more interactive ultimate.
She needs to get some sense and not drop the bongo on the floor, just leave it on her back and just turn it on. Instead of,
That would be funny. You gotta
slamming
shoot,
it,
you gotta
slamming
shoot-
it on the ground.
That would be really funny. And for buffs and nerfs, that's it. That's the suggestion right there. I think she's fine. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, again, when I say some changes, it like, and you think, oh, buffs, no way, don't buff Orisa. And I'm probably one of those people too who's like, I don't want another double shield meta. But
Yeah.
I think there's something. When I look at Orisa, I'm just like, there's something missing here. There's not really a bigger piece that she fits in, or a bigger jigsaw puzzle that she fits into.
Mhm.
But again, that could also change with new heroes. So I
Yep.
think for now she's fine. And like, if a new hero comes in that somehow helps her, then she might look a lot more appealing. So I think
True.
she's fine for now.
True. Okay. Fun against. What do you think?
I mean, she's fun if you're a sniper and you want a gigantic hitbox to chuck shit into, but I don't think she's particularly joyful. There's not a
No.
lot of dynamism in the interaction when you're trying to fight an Orisa.
No, she's a little dull. She's a little dull, and I think she's associated a great deal with spammier style comps, which are not super fun to play against. I mean, you associate her with the Junkrats, with the Torbjorns, with the Widowmakers, with, I'm trying to go through the DPS list here, even things like the Mays, the Bastions, you know, not exactly the most popular DPS lineups.
Yeah.
So I think even though her herself she's not particularly egregious, like Halt's not near as frustrating as it used to be. Yes, the fortify change is annoying, but it's not as bad as people cracked it up to be. The shield is very breakable. I don't think she's a particularly fun tank to play against. I say probably around 2. Not terrible, but not great.
Yeah, I think 2's fair. Let's have a look at some of the other numbers we've given. Like Moira was 1, Brig was 2. Yeah, I mean, I don't think she's any more obnoxious than Brig,
Certainly
current
not.
Brig, basically.
Certainly not.
Like, you know, specifically because she is herself not that obnoxious. Like you said, it's the metas that she potentially, or comps that she potentially enables, that are the bigger issue rather than the dull paint dry fight against an Orisa.
Yep.
Okay. My man Reinhardt. Okay, skill floor. So I think this is pretty low, even as a Reinhardt main. I think that for your base level competence, there's a reason why Reinhardt, I think, is like, you know, a sort of constant pick in all the elos, like in bronze and silver and stuff, because giant shield, guy who slaps you really hard, you know, everything like
That's a
everything
delightful way
about
to
his
describe
like
him.
everything about his like kit is very straightforward. Of course, as we'll get to later, understanding the kit, mastering the opposition and the metas is the real tough part. But I think in sort of understanding the base competence, I think it's fairly straightforward what a Reinhardt does.
I'd agree with that.
How do you feel?
I think the only thing, like, I'm a little on the fence with this one because, like Diva, I think there's a lot of people that played this hero wrong. I'm glad that people are starting to kind of understand more about clearing high grounds and clearing space and not just holding it down main.
Yes.
I heard something the other day was talking about like how like a lot of different tanks are operating like off tanks right now, and I think something to point out is I don't think that's true. I just think that people are now coming to realize that main tanks in Overwatch aren't there for your personal protection. I feel like there's this stigma that so many main tanks got stuck with, Orisa and Reinhardt, and the poor Winston's trying to explain to the team why I can play this hero. I'm not here to protect you. That's not my job.
Yes.
I'm here to create space so that you guys can walk forward and actually shoot people without being stuck in a choke 24/7. That's what Reinhardt's for. That's what Orisa's for. It's like Ball doesn't have any way of protecting his team really at all. All he does is he baits a lot of attention so that you guys can walk through because there's no damage shooting at you. They're all shooting at him. And I think Reinhardt, he has a shield, but the shield's not for you. It's for him. It's the same thing. He's there to create space, and he needs to clear high ground because that's the space that threatens his team. So he clears that space because if you stand there, he's going to hit you with his hammer. And I think like once we understand that, I think more people are understanding that. Then I think you're going to find a lot more effectiveness of the hero. But when we come to like skill floor, it's like I still feel like there's a lot of Reinhardts that kind of are stuck in that misconception. And that's where maybe you can construe some difficulty at picking him up, understanding how to do that. But outside of that, it's not a whole lot. Like you're low in HP, press your shield. You're not low in HP, drop your shield. And Fire Strike, Shatter. Charge is a little tricky, but like comparing him to other tanks. I don't think he has a particularly high skill floor, to be honest.
No, I don't think so. And go ahead.
Probably a 2.5. Let's say we have a Reinhardt that is self-aware about creating space and playing corners and not completely feeding. I think that's a 2.5. I'd say slightly higher than Orisa.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I might have gone with 2, but I think having put Orisa and new Orisa as 2.
Yeah.
And I think with the caveat that you kind of put in there about understanding his positioning, I think.
Right.
Yes, and I think this is something that obviously I'm trying my best to help people shift this mentality. With the Cloudy video and stuff, is that I think there has been a huge paradigm shift in the way tanks are seen, or particularly main tanks are seen. I think, I think it's important to elaborate on this point, because I do think it's very, very key to main tanks in particular. Is people have long associated with them as anchor tanks. Like anchor, I think is probably how people have synonymized them, right? Like the guy who sits on the payload and will always be there, and you can always rely on them to like be, to stand behind, so that they'll absorb some of the damage for you. But I think as Overwatch has become a bit more sophisticated, and people have understood that protection isn't always direct protection. Like it's like healing, right? Like healing isn't always direct healing. Sometimes pressuring a Pharah in the sky is a better way of healing your team as Ana than just spamming heals into their butt.
Sure.
And I think it's the same concept now that people have started to understand with tanks, is that, you could stand on a payload and let your shield burn to death, but also just clearing a high ground will alleviate greater pressure on your team and also make you less useless as a giant shield man. So I think people need to catch on to that idea, and obviously it will take a while, but I think that's very pertinent, particularly to Reinhardt now. I think there were metas maybe previously where you could just be shield man, but Overwatch doesn't operate that way anymore. I don't think.
No, I think as well. It's like you look at like value floor and skill floor, and right now I think maybe Reinhardt is seeing a lot of play time right now, especially in lower ranks. I mean, really across the board. But I think that's just because he's kind of strong right now. I don't think that all of a sudden everybody's kind of figured him out. Now he's easy to play. I think that he has the 50 extra armor. He does more swing damage, damage per swing. Excuse me. So I think that like. I mean, I very rarely see a Reinhardt being like at least somewhat properly played until around Platinum, which to me tells me, or even higher, which to me tells me that the hero still has some level of complexity to pick up the basics. So I think that's like what prevents him from being lower on the tier, even though you do see him a lot in lower ranks for sure. Yeah,
actually, I think that's the thing. It's like similar to D.Va, where it was like there was a lot of people were playing D.Va, and I think right now a lot of people are playing Rein. But you're right. I still think there's that misunderstanding, which is why I think otherwise I would have bumped it maybe lower. But I think you're right. I think that understanding of what his role is now is still not quite caught up.
Yep. I'm looking at ceiling now.
Yeah.
I mean, this one's actually pretty straightforward for me. I think it's 3. I think it's 3 right in the news. So I think that he's one of the less mechanically demanding heroes in the game. Obviously, like there are some little mechanics you can do with Hammer. Obviously, hitting fire strikes is relatively important. Being able to land your pins and all that stuff, but there's very like compare him to the rest of the cast, like almost little to no mechanics. And then I think, I just think that like a lot of his decision making and stuff, while that's very important, once you establish like the basics, I don't think he's like I don't think he's as hard as some of the other tanks in terms of like the actual ceiling.
I
think like I would say he's harder than maybe ceiling wise to master than a Mercy, harder than a Brig, but like when I compare him to like, for example, when I compare him to like a BAP, would you say like ceiling wise a lot higher than BAP like to master? And I just don't know that I would. I don't know that I would. I mean, it's definitely a little harder than Orisa, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think the only tricky thing about Rein is understanding his role, really, as a Reinhardt main. Right. I think, you could say, okay, well, fire strikes are difficult. Charges are particularly something people struggle with because it's, 9 or 10 times it's a suicide mission, and I do this wrong all the time myself. Yeah, it's very tough to resist the temptation. But the real difficulty is that decision making. Because the thing about Reinhardt is what makes him difficult is that the punishment is extreme with Reinhardt compared
Yeah.
to like an Orisa. It's like you make one wrong decision and it's like that's it. Like your team dies behind
Yep.
you or you die and
Yep.
that's over. So that is the difficulty, but he's similar to Mercy in that the actual physical mechanical output. Speaking if you're speaking of the FPS game, it's not there, and people have had to look for funny tech to try and maximize some of the value. So I don't know if you've been following recently the whole B-hop shatter, jump shatter kind of tech developments that are going on that I've been kind of
silly.
yeah. So it's like another way of trying to find like this meme extra value.
Yeah.
From a hero that otherwise like mechanically there's not that much
No.
else to do, right? It's just about timing.
No. Hey, SVV,
So I think-
SVV.
yeah.
Did you know that if you swing your hammer and then fire strike after, it is an animation cancel?
Amazing.
If I hear that again, I swear every single video is like this crazy new tech. I'm like, and that's basically it. Like that there's Reinhardt's mechanics right there. I mean that and like the square hitbox or whatever with this hammer. But yeah, I agree. I think.
Yeah.
I
I think 3 is reasonable. I think 3
Yeah.
is reasonable. I think like, there are other tanks that are hard. I think like, other main tanks that are, have the same decision making but have other mechanical stuff
Yep.
on top as well. Like,
Right.
D.Va and I think Winston will
Right.
come to as well.
Right,
Um,
exactly. To me, that's
so I
it
think
right
that's fair.
there. It's like the decision making and positioning is no harder than it is with other tank heroes, and he has less mechanics. So it's like I don't know exactly where you pull a higher value than 3 from, to be honest.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Value floor. I think there's a lot of value to be got playing Reinhardt. I think that again, if we're assuming a base level competence, so I think with what we've discussed, this average Reinhardt that we're thinking of is probably good at not feeding,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily fully understand the high ground clearing aspect yet. He's kind of struggling with it, or they are kind of she is kind of struggling with it, kind of trying to figure it out. I still think they could get a good amount of value. Let's see what do we
Oh,
put
yeah.
for Orisa 2.5. I think like a similar value to Orisa, honestly, because I think
Yeah.
that there is like the shield, but there's more explosive potential with the Reinhardt as well,
Right.
with the shatter and
Right.
the pins and the fire strike and the slap damage.
Yeah, and I also have to. Like, I feel it's odd saying this, but I think you have to incorporate lower rank meta in this as well. And I feel like you're going to be able to get more consistent value out of Reinhardt than just about any other main tank in most
Yes,
situations
that's
in the
also
mid to
true.
low ranks. So I think like it's going to be easier to run with more compositions. It's going to be easier to run on more maps. Even like the psychological value of, we have got a good Reinhardt in our team. Like you're going to win more games just off of that. I mean, I climbed, this is before like roll queue, but I was kind of a Reinhardt OTP back, and I climbed the Masters and I wasn't even very good at Reinhardt. But just because I one tricked him, I knew the basics and I like calmed a little bit, and oh my gosh, it was just so easy to
Yes.
lead teams. Compare him to like another team. So I would say probably a solid 3. Again, a little meta dependent right now, which feels funny saying in value floor, but I really do think that lower ranks, having Reinhardt is just as flat, like a 0.5 or a 1% more increased chance that you're going to win the game, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of, again, it's that understanding boost, right? It's like where we kind of marked Orisa down a little bit. It's like, well, where does she fit in? Like,
Yeah.
do people know exactly how to play around this hero? Reinhardt has the inherent buff of like, everybody kind of knows, right?
Yeah.
What to do with a Reinhardt comp. It's like pretty
Yeah.
straightforward, and everybody loves it when you're like, yeah, Ryan Zarya, let's go. Like, we know what to do. Press W. So
Yeah.
I think that's an automatic boost.
Yeah.
Now, value ceiling.
I mean, it's pretty high right now. I think you have to take skill ceiling and, add a multiplier of like meta strength right now. And I think 3.5 is probably right around there for me. I think, like having a really strong, confident Reinhardt in higher ranks, like you can win a lot of games. The hero is strong. The hero is really, really strong right now. So I think 3.5, pretty straightforward for me, but I'm open to your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm debating between 3 or 3.5. I think the trickiness is if your team now, so there's like the plat level of like what I just said, where everybody knows the basic of how to play with the Reinhardt, but there's also the struggle of not necessarily understanding the new Reinhardt role, right? So we kind of spoke about how
Right.
he's not there to protect you individually, and I maybe this is my personal bias, but I've been playing a lot in Master,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't tell you the number of teams that just like don't get
Yeah.
the whole
No,
I'm going to clear the high ground, and they're just like, please stand in front of me and shield me.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
for
yeah.
that reason, sometimes you can end up being quite impotent on Reinhardt. If like
True.
particularly without a Lucio speed boost.
Yeah.
Because you get like kited, there's people like just on multiple angles and you clear one and your team dies to the other because they
True.
don't, like they're not quite
So when are you
with
gonna
it.
send in a VOD?
I know, I need to. I definitely I'm learning that I was very rigid. Like I'm very guilty of the stuff that we're kind of castigating now. Like until recently, I was also very like, well, this is how you play Reinhardt because I spent years playing Reinhardt as like anchor tank.
Yep.
So I'm still personally in this phase of like really internalizing the idea of Reinhardt as like, as Cloudy describes it, an off-angle clearing DPS.
Yep.
So I'm still in
bad
teething
habits.
problem. I'm still having teething problems, basically.
Yeah, I hear
So I
you.
don't blame the rest of the community for being
Yeah.
the same. But that's the only reason why I would maybe knock it down to 3. But I can fully understand, like in a fully realized game, with pros and stuff, 3.5 makes sense.
Right, and that's the thing for me, because you are assuming that they're
We're
playing...
talking ceiling, yeah.
Right, we're talking
Yeah,
ceiling,
still
and that's
3.5.
and that's like 4.5, 4.6, somewhere around there. I think main tank diff is a big thing. So, at least with Reinhardt right now. Buffs, nerfs, thoughts?
I actually think that, well, he's gonna get a sort of a restructure, right, come Overwatch 2.
Yeah.
I think there's like certain things that need to be nerfed and certain things that I might change.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think his damage is a little bit high, even as a
Same.
Reinhardt main. I think his damage is
Same.
a little bit high. I think that the buff was a little bit excessive,
Same.
and also didn't really address
Nope.
what was problematic with Ryan at the time. And I think now he just like slaps a little bit too hard.
Yep, and that's Blizzard
As
balancing
much as I
sometimes.
As much as I enjoy being on the giving end, I still think that sometimes it's like it feels a bit silly. So I think, with the fact that he's going to get this whole rework with a smaller shield but 2 fire strikes and a charge that's more mobile, I think even in
That's
that
insane to me.
world, we probably wanted to lower his damage. So I think, minus 0.5, I'd say.
I think so as well. I think, like you said, the damage is the big one for me. I don't mind. I'm glad that he's CC'd less. I don't even mind the HP buff. Sure, go for it. Because that was kind of echoed more of what he needed to work with. But I do not think the damage was necessary. I mean, in all actuality, like Cloudy brute forced the sucker to, number 1 spots before Echo and Tracer nerfs and things like that even came through. So like that tells you, like, obviously he was a little bit revolutionary with that, so credit to him, but also like I think the hero was like just kind of like brute force its way into the meta, because if you look at the meta right now, you wouldn't really describe Lucio or Reaper or Mei as being like a particularly oppressive. Even Kree is strong, but like Kree's not like super meta defining. I really think actually this might be one of the metas where Ryan is the meta defining, the tank is the meta defining hero, and it is almost unquestionably Ryan. So I think that is not cause for concern, but it's certainly something that makes you kind of question. Fun against, I mean, I have very few problems with Reinhardt. I think Pin is a little annoying. I think that's about it. I would say probably a very solid 3.5 or 4. I mean, heck, they even nerfed Shatter.
Yeah,
like that Shatter,
which is interesting, because Shatter nerf is one of the few nerfs that I think that like the community is all like,
I hate it.
We didn't need this CC nerf. Like we didn't like every other CC people are like, yeah, down with that CC. But yeah, Shatter nerf is the only one where the community, at least I feel, maybe we're in a bubble, but this community was all like, what? Like, give it back. Like, they don't need that.
Yeah. I honestly think Shatter was like maybe they made it just even easier to survive that ultimate. So I think that the only annoying thing about Ryan is Pin, but that honestly screws him over as much as it screws he's over.
Yes, exactly.
So I think like he's very strong right now, which to me prevents him from being a full 4 maybe. But I don't know, either a 4 or a 3.5. I think you have a hard time putting him elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at like some of the other heroes. Like, I don't think we've given anyone a 4, which perhaps is like inner gamer saltiness. Like, there's never a 4.
We didn't give a 4?
No, I think Zen is 3.5. Genji was, I think, high as well.
Oh, that's right. We were talking about potentially Winston being a 4. I remember that. That's what that's what I'm thinking of. Okay. Well, what are your thoughts? I'll leave this one to you.
So, I mean, yeah, I think that the thing that I think nobody really likes anybody. Like, nobody really is like, I would delighted for this to be a 4.
Yes.
But the thing is that I think the community has a lot of fondness for Reinhardt in that they enjoy Overwatch when Reinhardt is the stable tank.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I might be inclined for him to be a 4, but that's
Yeah.
my bias as well.
Yeah, he's also
So-
benefited from like mass amounts of pity for a while because he was bad
Yes.
for a long time, and now he's not even bad. He doesn't even really need the pity, but people still feel sorry for him anyway. Like it's like the bronze trope. Oh, you know, Reinhardt's, they're completely victimized by the team. We feel sorry for them, and everybody's like, you know, whatever. So whether that's deserved or not, I don't know. But
I think it's because nobody wants to play main tank. I think that's
Yeah,
the thing.
sure,
It's like
sure.
it's like everybody sympathizes because they're like, I'm glad that sucker is
Yeah,
doing that job
yeah.
and not me.
yeah. I think 3.5 or 4. What do you think?
Yeah. I think okay, we'll put it 3.5 for now and maybe we'll reassess. I think
Sure.
if we're leaning towards maybe Winston being a 4,
Yeah.
then we can leave it at that. But I think 3.5 is certainly inarguable, I would say.
Yes, we can go back. Okay. Oh boy, this one will be fun. This here actually, I think
Yeah,
is
are
gonna be
you
pretty,
floor?
This is gonna be pretty fast. Yeah, I'm floor. I think this one will be pretty fast.
Okay.
Skill floor. Honestly, think 2, probably. Like, there's just not a lot to the hero.
Yes, yeah.
It like you
Yeah, I was
talk-
gonna say,
it's,
yeah,
it's
go ahead.
raw mechanics. And positioning. The only hard part about Roadhog is mechanics and positioning. Which I know that sounds like, oh, forehead, obviously, like that's like all there is to any hero. But with Roadhog, it's not even that hard to position right. You just have to flank.
Yes,
that's
yeah.
that's it. You just
Yes,
have to
that's
flank.
it,
If you
that's it.
flank, and that's your positioning. You know, and not feeding her on corners, and then mechanics. That's it. Like the vape, not hard to use. Roadhog hook, literally just mechanics. There's almost no, like, obviously people talk about like using your melee to bait cooldown, like bait your hook, you know, to bait stuff, you know, obviously. But like every hero can say that. Every hero has some complexity in it. But when you compare Roadhog to the rest of the tank line, the skill floor is just significantly lower to me. And I'm looking back at some of our other DPS heroes. Again, his ultimate is not hard to use. Bastion mechanically is easier in playstyle. Well, if skill floor is easier in playstyle. I would say 2 or 1.5 for skill floor. And I think it's just the mechanics that keep him above a 1, or well, that give him a potential 2 for me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think the mechanical element probably is leaning me towards the 2 as well, because it's like in theory it's easy, like just land a hook forehead.
Right.
Of course, it's a little bit more tricky than that to do it consistently, right? And
Yes.
it, consistently enough to demand value, like to kind of justify the pick, basically.
Yeah.
Because if you're like whiffing, if you're like 50% even hook accuracy, depending on how frequently you're chucking it out, I don't even think that's good enough. Because it's like you could just be getting a different hero and more general.
Yeah.
And I know we're mixing with value, but I
Yeah,
still
yeah.
think for that reason, yeah, I think 2 is probably
Skill
reasonable.
floor and value floor always were tricky to differentiate, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2 is fine for me.
Okay.
Ceiling?
Skill ceiling. I mean, again, it's like there's not much change in that. It's like how many hooks are you landing, basically. It's like how well are you timing your flanks, and how many hooks are you landing, basically.
Yeah.
But there's not that much. There's not intricacy to it. There is
No.
a min max to it, but there's not intricacy to it.
No.
So I think like a very middling, like even a 2, I think, or
Yeah,
2.5.
I'd say 2. 2 for me. Because you compare him to like the other DPS that he's competing against. Like so many other DPS that are flankier. As I get a subscription, thank you, Adam. Like he has just an easier job with what he's supposed to be doing. He doesn't really have a lot of abilities that he needs to be like figuring out and min maxing. It's pretty straightforward. I think just 2. I honestly just feel 2 with ceiling. It's because like, yeah, there's just not a lot to it. Like there's not the micro little details that so many of the other heroes, even like quote unquote basic heroes like Mercy, have, and Hog just doesn't have them. It's literally just mechanics when you get to the higher tier, and like you said, timing your flanks.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that lowers this a little bit, I think, is how spammy he can be as well. Like, it's not like it's not like you need to necessarily land all your right clicks either. Like,
No.
At worst, if you just chuck it into like the spam areas, you will apply a lot of pressure that way too. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that lowers it as well.
It doesn't stop people, in lower ranks from playing Hog like a main tank, though. If I see another Reinhardt, I was playing the other day in Diamond, Reinhardt Roadhog tank line, and we're playing against Ryan Zarya in like a short brawly style map, and our Roadhog is like sticking right up his Reinhardt. I'm like, ugh. Like, we just lose every single tank trade because I've got a Roadhog bleeding ult charge, not bubbling his Zarya. I'm like, please, Roadhog, please flank. Like, threaten them some.
I know.
You're not going to get any hooks that way, but yeah, like, that's another story. Value floor. I don't know on this one. So this is one I'm a little out of touch with because I just don't see a lot of Roadhog. I don't see a lot of like lower rank VODs with Roadhog in them. So I don't know if he's just an unpopular hero or there's like a lower rank perception where, oh, you can only play him if you have really good aim or what. So I'm actually, I know this is technically my turn here, but I want to hear your thoughts on this.
I think the reason he's not played that much is less to do with his value. I think it's more to just do with he's a little bit, again, we were saying earlier, he's kind of like the black sheep of tanks, because really he's a DPS for like ostensibly everything about him other than his HP pool is basically a DPS hero, right?
Yeah.
Like we said, flanking and getting kills is basically the Roadhog way. And I think that you often see Roadhog mains who are basically not tank players, and I think that's one of the reasons why, because I think actually his value in the quote-unquote metal tanks is really high, like really, really high, because I think if you execute the hooks, there's a lot more hooks to be had, right? It's like at the lower levels, like people are giving you more chance to hook them for free. So if you're like a basically competent Roadhog, it's one of the easiest one shots to land in the game.
Yeah,
comparatively.
That's fair.
Comparatively.
That's fair.
So I think for that reason, I would give him a fairly high. I think like 2.5 is reasonable. I think slightly more than D.Va, because I think that lethality is always more powerful at sort of median ranges.
The only reason I wouldn't say higher is because I do think his ultimate is pretty well.
I think it's a very good tank busting ultimate. I think it's very good for fucking up other tanks.
I'm thinking higher ranks, but in lower ranks that
but actually, floor, I think
it's easier to get value out of, because people in lower ranks tend to clump up more and do these kind of like forehead brawl into each other, and so you're going to get more value out of that, even if you are on a flank. Okay, yeah, I'm open to 2.5.
I think the other thing about it is that it's like, again, Whole Hog kind of struggles in a meta sense, because it's like, well, what the hell's the purpose of this ultimate in terms of like the bigger picture?
Yeah.
But I think in the mess of ranked, it's an amazing ult just to like shut down another ult, basically. I think, which is actually a really good value.
Yeah,
like just like
true.
Fuck up a Winston entirely, and it's like his primal rage is now useless.
Sure. Okay, ceiling. This is yours, so you're just chaining it back to back. I'm just shifting everything
I think
since
I took floor, why don't you take ceiling?
Ceiling, I think. I mean, 2. Like or no, value ceiling. Okay, I'm not even thinking skill ceiling. Man, like 1.5. I think I would probably say. I think maybe the only thing preventing him from being a 1 is there are a couple maps where Roadhog is good. And Roadhog is, so I mentioned a niche where he can be played. He is pretty good against Tracer, and he is pretty good against Ball. And this is at like the higher tiers. Like he's pretty good. Like Roadhog is kind of difficult to deal with as a Ball player, and obviously even a good Tracer player, you land a hook and it's over. And Roadhog is not a tank that you can consistently bully. So he's obviously bad in higher ranks, at the top ranks. But there are some maps where there are more flanks. There's maps, and obviously Ball Tracer are pretty popular heroes still. So I'd say either 1 or 1.5, but I would not say he's, like we talked about value ceiling 1 with Bastion. I'd rather have a Roadhog than a Bastion. Not by a lot, but by a little.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trust most of my random Roadhogs, but I think 1.5 is fair. I think just all the fact that you can land. I've played a fair amount recently with Nateson, and he's a monster on this hero. Like he just like he will land so many hooks that the pick is garbage, but he justifies the pick, right? It's like he literally will go and get 2 to 3 kills every fight, and I'm like, well, I don't really like having this hero in my team, but when it's you, I'm all right with it. So I think for that reason, I think 1.5. Like it's not like garbage tier 1, right? I think he struggles because there's nowhere to pick him. And again, I think he's just a black sheep, and really, I just think everything screams this guy needs to go into the DPS category if they actually want him to have a place. But yeah, 1.5. I think
Yeah.
not absolute dumpster.
Yep. Okay, buffs,
Buffs,
nerfs.
nerfs.
Oh boy, these next two are gonna be fun.
Again, I just think he needs to go DPS. I don't think it's like a case of like if we buff. We saw what happens when Roadhog is buffed. Like the problem with Roadhog is
It's too
a world
easy.
where Roadhog is a problem where Roadhog is one of the 2 best tanks is a bad world. And we lived in that world and it was
Yeah.
fun for like a week.
Yeah.
And it was like, but apart from that, it was just like, well, this is now just a death match. This is a glorified death match.
Yeah.
And I think like that just kind of goes against what I think Overwatch is supposed to be at its best.
Yep. Yep. I think heavily asterisked. Heavily asterisked. Because even if you were to keep him as a tank, I would think you'd want to remove the one-shot mechanic itself and find some way to get value out of him outside of that. And honestly, the self-heal, the lack of armor, the no defensive capabilities, he's just weird. Like he creates space by just being being impossible to 1v1. That's how he creates space.
Yes, yeah.
And that's just kind of like, I guess, to me, it's like the Moira thing. Her utility is her ability to just survive, and Roadhog's ability is to just survive or threaten kills. But to me, that's not like, I don't know. I wouldn't say he's terribly designed. It can be a lot of fun to play, but he's an odd duck for sure.
I think he's a lot of fun to play individually. I think like again,
Yeah.
my personal opinion is that when he's like one of the 2 tanks in the game, it makes it
No.
not what you really want. IMO.
No, I agree. Fun against, not at all. Not at all.
No.
Not at all fun against. 1.5 maybe. The only thing fun,
any character with a 1-shot is not going to be fun
no,
against.
and especially one like Roadhog, where it's like, obviously there is skill to it, which is to me what prevents it from being a 1. But it is not crazy hard, and he just kind of lives on a flank and one-shots you, and that's it. Like you can't just 1v1 him. You can't, like, you can obviously counter, like, he's not very good, but like I don't even know how to describe it. Like, he's just not fun. It's not, like you said, a tank with a 1-shot just seems unfair. And that whole hog is pretty darn annoying. Like, I speak with somebody who used to play a lot of Genji. Hate that ability, hate that ultimate. It's really annoying.
Yeah.
I don't know. The only thing that's fun against Hog is the fact that you just have one big fat body to shoot. Like, as a Zenyatta or Ana, that's fun.
I tell you who's having fun. Yeah, Ana players. I tell you, they're
Yeah.
having a lot of fun because it's just like
for
a
sure.
complete shutdown on this guy. But I think other than that, it's like I think a good sort of reference point is: do you want to face this character in the deathmatch mode?
No.
And the answer is absolutely, like, when we put Moira as 1, because like you absolutely are not gonna have any
No.
fun if somebody picks this guy in the
No.
deathmatch. So it's like I think for the same reason, he has to be the lowest tank. I think of the
Oh, for
tanks,
sure.
has to be the lowest fun against
For sure. The only thing keeping him above a 1 for me is the fact that, yeah, it does take skill to land hook. It is not like Moira
Yes.
level of, are you just,
It's not free.
Yeah, I think we give him a 1.5.
Yeah, again, I think like Orisa is boring, but she's not obnoxious, whereas
Yeah.
Roadhog is, or can be, obnoxious. I mean,
Yes.
we've all been there, like, there's a Roadhog in our backline, please deal with him, somebody please deal with him, and it's just like nobody deals with him, and he's just like, yeah.
Yep. All right. Okay, well, that wraps that up. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're already halfway done. We're putting up a pretty good pace. Under an
Yeah,
hour
really
and
good.
20. Holy smokes, we're killing it. Now, that one was pretty easy. But
Yeah,
we've got a couple of tricky ones coming up. So skill floor for me with Sigma. I actually think it might be a little bit high, a little higher than some of the other ones. Maybe probably around a 2.5, same as Diva. Simply because, like a lot of off tanks, you're not going to, well, except for maybe the exception of Zarya, you're not going to get a lot done kind of AFKing on mid. Especially since the shield nurse. Like, before, you can maybe argue that he's so strong that the skill floor is maybe a little lower, but now I think to kind of get anything out of this hero, you do have to kind of understand off angles, you do have to understand your sight lines, and obviously you have to hit your shots, which isn't easy as Sigma, as well as getting value out of accretion, getting value out of kinetic grasp. And even his ultimate isn't super easy. So I'd probably say a solid 2.5 in terms of skill floor.
Yeah, I might even say 3, to be honest. Ooh, why am I trying to print this? Sorry. I pressed the print button. I might even argue for a 3 just because Actually, is he higher than Diva? Maybe. There's a lot of
Yeah.
lethality to Sigma, which makes him, it's always good if your character can just kill stuff because that's very like
Yep.
it makes the job easier to understand.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to manage, and I think particularly with the shield nerfs, it's like
So let's streamline
now.
this. Let's streamline
Yeah,
this.
go ahead.
I would say Sigma has harder mechanics than Diva, unquestionably.
Yeah.
So would you say that Sigma's positioning / cooldown management is as hard as Diva's, or easier, or harder? Because I think that's where we can make the comparison.
Yeah, I think it probably evens out because I think it's probably less hard than Divas because he has more, basically. He has more to like survive with and do with. So
I can tell you from coaching like Platinum and Diamond around that region, or even High Gold, that it is a little easier to coach basic positioning with Sigma than it is with Diva.
Yeah.
You're more, it's not just you're less likely to get punished with it, that's more value, but like it is a little easier to kind of go over the nitty-gritty details. Those details aren't quite as impactful, so I think that's where we have the kind of even trade, I guess.
Yes, yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Okay, ceiling, what do you think?
Skill ceiling, again, I think there's a lot of aspects to his kit to master, and I think particularly this would have been maybe lower with the shield being the flick shield, but now it's a little bit more tricky. I still think he's very strong, individually as a hero. But I think there's a fair amount to manage. So let's have a look. What was Diva? 4, Diva 2.5, 3. I think 3 is fair. I don't think he has necessarily the same heavy burden of decision making that a Reinhardt does or even a Diva does. But there's obviously a lot more mechanical element to him. So
sure, I would say solid 3. Solid 3. Like the amount of mechanical difficulty, the being able to position, like shield management is tricky, obviously. I'd say definitely a solid 3. The only thing maybe keeping him, like, I think the difference there between him and Diva is like when we talk about like the contextual positioning and game sense, knowing where to be at the right time, that becomes a little bit more important and more difficult with Diva than it is with Sigma, and the higher in rank that you go. So we start to see Diva's 2.5, and the Diva pulls ahead to a 4 in the higher ranks, and Sigma kind of stays at a 3. I think that kind of matches my experience. Especially because when you look at Diva, like Sigma, for example, Sigma has been played with like Ball, but his role was fairly similar to how he played previously. Whereas Diva, if you're playing in Brawl, if you're playing in Dive, there's a pretty decent difference in how you play the game at each. So you kind of have to know how my role changes against each matchup, and there is more of a discrepancy with Diva in that regard than there is with Sigma, if that makes any sense.
No, that definitely makes sense. I think, yeah, it's a very good point to bring up. I think 3 is reasonable for that reason.
Okay. Value floor.
Okay, so value floor. Go ahead.
I mean, if we're taking something of Ingles, positioning ourselves, have a base level positioning, I think, oh man, I'm trying to think here. Probably. So here's the thing: is I think Sigma is like the worst beta hero right now, unquestionably. Like in lower ranks, like I think he's gonna be a little harder to get value out of, at least in the meta. But man, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I'm trying to have a think about I'm trying to have a think about like, again, like a sort of average, a competent Sigma.
Yeah.
How much value is that guy getting? Let's have a look. Is he getting as much value as Orisa? Probably. A little bit more than Diva. I think, I think 2.5 seems reasonable. It's a little bit more than Diva, again, because of the higher lethality, the higher chance to do stuff as you're on your own. Yeah, I think 2.5 is reasonable.
Sure. That seems fair to me. This has been, interestingly enough, I think this has been the toughest category we've done between DPS and supports. I don't know if we've just gotten pickier or what, but this has been tough.
Yes.
Okay.
It's tough. It's also very like, because it's so changing, I think, with tanks. Like, DPS, like their strength is usually, there is obviously meta elements to it, but like their balance is, I think, a lot more direct is correlation to their viability. Whereas tanks, it's like there's a lot of other things going on. It's not just like how strong they are individually. Although sometimes, as you said, you can like brute force your way in, like Reinhardt did.
Yeah. What do you think about ceiling?
I think it's high, but not mega high, because I think like you said, there is like, from whatever I've seen, again, I'm not gonna claim to be anywhere near up to speed on like the highest tier meta, but from whatever I've seen, there is still a place in Sigma. Although I think it's, from what I gather, it's a receding place in the meta, where people are kind of figuring out that
It's higher than Hog.
we could. Yes,
It's higher than Hog.
well, for sure.
But
I
not-
think, like, let's see, Ryan's 3.5. I think higher than Orisa too. Obviously, Hog's the same, and less than Diva. So
I don't know if it's higher than Orisa though.
you think?
Maybe.
Is it not the? Well, it's high. It's the same as Hog, right? Or Orisa's the same as Hog right now. So I think 2.
Yeah. He just is not very popular in the meta right now. That's a big thing. He's not very good in the meta. But you know, he did get some of his shield time things reverted, so it's a little more manageable. Maybe we could see it too.
Yeah,
Maybe I
what's
can
kind of
see it too.
giving you pause?
Yeah, I think the thing that's giving me pause is the fact that he's just not very popular in the meta right now. But that might just be, you know, the hero itself. Like, obviously we have to factor in meta, but maybe the hero itself is, honestly, you can still get, he's still decently strong. He's just not super favored right now. So I would say probably like 2 is fine. 2 is fine. I don't think he's crazy weak. I will say this though, the shield reclamation nerf really did hit him hard.
Yeah.
When they I mean, it's 2 now, I believe, but when it was 2.5,
Yeah.
it was up from what, 1? Went from 1
Yeah.
to 2.5. Like that was huge, because it just, people think that like, oh, blocking Roadhog hooks and Ana nades and things like that, but it's not just that. It's, you're getting Dove, you're 1v1ing a Tracer, Sombra hack, peeling your backline against a D. Like, just, there's a ton of little things like blocking Ball Slam that just weren't viable anymore after that, at least with any level of consistency. So I would say 1.5 or 2. I'm on the fence though.
Yeah, that's fair. I definitely think, I kind of remember when that came out, and I was telling my, like, you know, people were like, what do you think? And I was like, yeah, this is just gonna completely wreck the way he's played, because I think it just like, it just makes his life very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about that as like, fluidity is what you want to aim for as many heroes as you possibly can, and nerfs should not affect fluidity, because it makes the hero feel unfun to play. And I think that was a nerf that affected his fluidity. But yeah. Anyway.
Actually, funny thing that, you know, when he first came, it was a 0-second cooldown. It was like, you know, you could flick it immediately.
It was a little too fluid.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we can
I think maybe slightly more value than Orisa to be had, because of, you know, let's say if she's equally out of meta, at least he has more individual autonomy, I would say.
Sure. That's fair.
Okay, buffs versus nerfs.
So
I kind of gathered that you feel like the shield nerf was a little bit too much.
Can we do a 0.10? No. Like all I really want is like, it's like, if I want the shield thing to be reverted to like 1.5 or something like that. I think, like, we don't want it like a matrix. Like, I think the 1 second being a little too short is understandable. Like, you can make a good argument for that, but like, let's do with 1 second instead of 1.2 or whatever, because there has to be like counterplay, which is where that gap is of the 1.5 or whatever. But it also can't be, okay, I can't do anything. Like, I'm put down my shield and I have to wait for 2.5 seconds. That being said, if we bring back if we dial it back an additional half a second, if we all of a sudden start seeing Sigma in the meta again, you know, maybe I can theoretically see, okay, maybe we can reduce the splash damage on his primary fire or something minor like that. But yeah, I think minor buff maybe to his fluidity, but not an overall. He doesn't necessarily need an overall buff yet, at least in my current opinion.
Yeah, and I think that the sad part about Sigma,
you actually
is
put
that
0.1. You madman.
I think the sad part about him is that he's not actually, and maybe this will fits into the fun against, he's not an obnoxious tank in of himself, I don't think. It's more that when he was popular, it was with Orisa and then later Ball.
Yeah.
And they both became very obnoxious metas to play up against.
Right. Well, in his placement in the Ball Sigma meta wasn't even because he was strong. It's just because, I mean, we've talked about this, but like Echo and Tracer and Discord were so strong that you needed a tank that just didn't die constantly. Yeah. And Diva just died constantly. Zarya couldn't even reach the fights. Orisa obviously wasn't going to fit. She was too immobile. Like, there's just too many reasons why you were not playing those other heroes, and it wasn't even that Sigma was strong. He just didn't demand healing constantly, like some of the other tanks did.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. What's up, Bogo? We're getting to Winston next. Don't worry. Fun against. On that note, I mean, reasonable. I don't think he's like particularly obnoxious. He's particularly delightful either.
No. People hate double shield, and Sigma's ability to shield on another off angle was very unpopular. I would probably say 2, a solid 2 for me.
Yeah, I think 2 is fair.
He's a little more, I guess, favorable because of the shield cooldown, but also because the shield is very breakable right now. But he is still very, very strong. He's a strong 1v1 hero. He does have a CC. He still does have a matrix. He has kind of like a jack of all trades in that regard. And Flux is a pretty like spooky ultimate. So I don't think he's like awful.
Yeah,
but it's not great.
Yeah, it can be hard to kind of go up against him, which obviously I think makes it a little bit annoying. But I think other than that, he's not necessarily like super frustrating. Okay, Winston. And my man Boger's in chat right now, so he's going to be watching with, keen eyes. Skill floor. Now, the funny thing is that like people for the longest time were like, no aim, no brain, Winston mains. But I actually think that the way the game has gone and with the number of counters to Winston, it is actually difficult.
Oh yeah,
really difficult to figure out. Even like it's simple to understand what a taser does and what the bubble does and what the jump does, but actually executing.
Yeah. Agreed.
I think to figure those things out. So I think like, what did we say Ryan was 2.5? I think Winston's a little bit higher than that, maybe.
Oh yeah. For sure.
3.
At least, maybe even higher, because I don't know of a tank that's more like maybe. I just don't know, because like even his ultimate, like when you compare it to like Diva Bomb, that's a harder ultimate. Primal is definitely a harder ultimate to get initial value of, and also
Primal
like,
is
we have to understand that like when we're talking about Reinhardt, thank you for the sub, Lightwave. Sorry. That Reinhardt, we'd have to talk about like clearing high ground, and that's a little tricky concept that you kind of have to understand when you're picking up Reinhardt. Well, Winston just takes that and just triples that. Like you have to understand about like who to dive, where to dive, how to dive, clearing flanks, clearing high ground, like a mid-fight, pre-fight positioning. Like even as like a halfway decent Winston, like you have to understand some of those things at least to achieve what I would call a skill floor. I think like certainly a 3, and you could argue for higher, because again I'm kind of going back here. I mean, we put Tracer at a 4 on skill floor, which I think was fair. Genji at a 3. Like, would you say Winston is significantly easier than Genji? Not. I mean, he's probably a little easier simply because maybe like if we let the value floor bleed in a little bit, Winston's a little stronger than Genji right now. You don't have to master all those little details, but he's certainly not that much easier.
Yeah, I think again the tricky thing for him is that he's easily countered as well. I think it's something to add. It's like you could be doing a decent job, but then suddenly like a couple heroes appear, like a hog appears, and it's like, well, now what? So I think 3, maybe 3.5. I think if she's on par with maybe a Widowmaker.
I think
because Widowmaker was 3.5. And
I think also like his ultimate is harder to get value out of when you compare him to other tank ultimates. You actually have to do it.
Yeah, I think it's probably the hardest ultimate really. Like there's or one of. There's no ceiling to how good you can be with Primal Rage.
Right,
and for that reason, leading into skill ceiling.
Right. I mean, it's got to be 3.5, maybe 4.
I think in the meta it might even be 4. In the meta, I think it might even be 4.
Yeah.
I think if Diva's 4, I think Winston's that level right now, because it's just like you fuck up once as Winston, you die. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is that people don't understand that the playstyles of Winston, like flanking, straight diving, playing more like clearing chokes, like what angle to play, like that's really hard. Like as a Winston, you're playing completely different depending on the composition that you're playing with and the composition that you're playing against. Playing Winston into double sniper, playing Winston into hard brawl, playing Winston into, you can still like Reap. Everybody jokes about Reaper being a counter to Winston. It's not really if you know how to play around it, if you know how to like position around that and like play around that, but you have to know how to do it. And that's a tricky thing. And then obviously we talk about, I mean, is it the most mechanically difficult ultimate to use in the game? Like ceiling wise, like it's got to be Pulse Bomb, Blade, and Primal. Those are the most difficult. I don't know of. I mean, you can make a good argument that it's harder than Pulse Bomb, and maybe harder than Blade as well. In terms Primal Rage, I don't know. It's got to be 3.5 or 4 for me easily.
I think so. I think so. I think again the sort of punish that Winston gets is makes it a 4.
Yeah.
And the kind of teamwork that it relies on as well. I think someone like a Tracer, you can kind of do your own thing a little bit and frag out. Whereas Winston is like, it's very, very at the highest level, it's very, very difficult to you're doing everything for the cause of the team and the angle clearing and everything for the team.
Yeah.
So I think that makes it more difficult as well because it's not just instant reward for what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
So value floor. I don't know if there's a lot Winston gets by just existing, to be honest.
Mm-mm. But keep in mind, we're talking about playing him at the
But
skill
again,
floor.
a competent level.
Right.
I think a 2, probably, considering, I think, again, on kind of level with the D.Va.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're like, a reasonable Winston's probably getting 2. I think, again, if we're thinking floor, he's probably not getting the kind of follow-ups that he would make it higher.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think like it's very tempting to just go into like the meta analysis here and be like, oh yeah, he's a really strong hero right now. He's a 3, but yeah, he's countered by a lot. There are a lot of maps where he's not super good. So I think like it is like I mean the same kind of criteria we played out with D.Va. Even when you play him at a competent level, he is going to be a little tricky to get value out of. I don't think you're going to be as much value as like say a Reinhardt in this current meta. So probably a 2.5 or a 2 for me.
Yeah, I think Orisa would probably have slightly, and Hog probably have slightly more. I think direct value is always what I think of when I think of floor. It's like it's obvious value is always great to see and great to understand, like particularly when you're talking like your average player.
Yep.
I think the obvious value Winston isn't always there. Obviously, he can just like farm backlines for fun, but the obvious value isn't always there.
No, yeah, I agree.
So for that reason, I would say 2.
Okay. Ceiling?
Ceiling.
I mean, 3.5 or a 4 in this current meta. He's very strong right now. He has been a little power crept, and I'm not complaining because I think Winston's a great hero, but we've seen bubble HP increased. We've seen, his armor increase. We've seen his damage to armored targets increase with like the beam tick rates or whatever, at least since in the last couple of years anyway. And again, I'm not complaining. I think Winston's a phenomenal hero. But also right now, like with Echo being slightly nerfed, with Tracer being slightly nerfed, with Ashe being slightly nerfed, with Kree being slightly nerfed, there are a lot of things that have kind of gone his favor right now. And I think like if you're a really, really good Winston, you're gonna have a good time in the ladder, and you're gonna have a good time in scrims. So I think 3.5 probably would be where I'd put him.
Yeah, I think 3.5. I think speaking ceiling, yes. I think
I mean,
at the highest level, yes, I think so.
The tricky thing is there just are very few people in the West that play Winston properly, so it means that we're less likely to run into them. But like you look at like Korea and Overwatch League, and you see a lot of the better Winston Monkey players that are still getting really, really good value out of him. And even now, like there's plenty of 4.6 Winston players, and that alone is a green light, I suppose.
Yeah, so buffs and nerfs. So you kind of mentioned the buffs. Funny enough, actually, he was one of the 2 heroes until recently who had received the fewest changes in Overwatch, along with Tracer. I think I remember I did a quiz like maybe 6-7 months ago, or maybe a year ago, and him and Tracer had only been changed, I think, 4 times or 2 times, and I think some of them were just like the bug where if you get anti-nated and you primal, you don't get your HP shot up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But of course, like you said, recently he has been power crept. But I think those were fair. So I don't really think he needs a nerf, to be honest, or a buff for that matter.
I think he's fine. And I'm heavily biased. I honestly think he's fine. Like I think I think the fact that he does have such a high skill floor, and such a relatively even now like a relatively low value floor, because there's so many heroes that like, the thing with Winston is he is soft countered by so many heroes. That's another thing about the skill floor. Like Roadhog, soft counter. I'm trying to think here. Even D.Va, if you don't know how to play against a D.Va, that can be tricky. Brig, soft counter. Bap, Mortality Field can be a soft counter. Playing against a Moira, I mean, really the DPS line, Tracer soft counter, Torbjorn soft counter, Sombra can be a pain to deal with, Reaper soft counter, Mei soft counter, McCree soft counter, Junkrat can be difficult, Hanzo can actually be relatively difficult, Echo is a soft counter, Doomfist can be difficult, Bastion's a hard counter, and as close to it as there is. So there's so many of the DPS casts that do very well against Winston if he doesn't know what he's doing. So I think like, even though he might be a little bit power crept, you wouldn't know it until pro meta, and then you want to see pro Winston play, so you're not even that unhappy about it. So I think like leave him as he is, see how things go. Maybe you know, we talk about things down the road, but even then, like I think like his he's received some buffs, but nothing super crazy. Like you can make a good argument that the 100 extra shield was just a balance for the DPS power creep that we've seen over the last like 3 years. Same thing with the 50 armor. I mean, compare it to what Reinhardt's got. You know, Reinhardt also got 50 armor, but he got 50 armor and the HP from the 50. Like he went to 550. Winston didn't get that. So I think he's honestly fine.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think we might maybe look at the discrepancy between skill floor and value floor and say, that's a bit unfair. You know, this hero is so hard, he's only getting a 2. But again, I think if we keep in the pro level in mind, which is obviously ideally the state of Overwatch, you want to keep that in mind.
Yep.
In that case, I think, yeah, you're fine. You don't necessarily want him to be rampant either.
No, I think it's fine as it is. Like you said, the only thing is maybe you could find a way to like increase his value floor, but like I said, my problem with that is that I don't know what you do to make him feel better against so many of these DPS heroes without actually
that's the real problem,
without actually making him broken in high ranks. I'm not sure what you do there. But anyway, okay, fun against. What are your thoughts?
I think we kind of alluded to it earlier, right? Like I think it's great. Like it's very
yeah.
There's a lot of fun battles to it.
Yeah. The only thing is Primal Rage is a little annoying, but there's like you can burn it.
Yes.
There's a lot of CC to deal with it. I if we don't give Winston a 4, I don't know what we'd give a 4. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think like, is there anyone who's really like, oh, I hate going up against Winston? Maybe Genji players, but
yeah. I mean, even then, it's like very easy to play around, and Winston, Winston is usually the type of hero that like allows your type of comp to be played more often. So, yeah. Well, there's our 4. There it is. After 30 heroes, we finally found a hero that we don't mind playing against.
Yeah, we came close, but yeah, I think. I mean, yeah, maybe some. I'm sure some people will disagree, but I think that's like it's not really that much obnoxious about Winston. I don't think it's pretty easy to like change heroes and like now you're fine.
Yep. Okay, Ball. 2 more.
Skill floor. Is this me this time or is it you?
I honestly don't remember. You just take it.
Okay. Skill floor. So I think he is kind of tricky because there's a lot of like you don't access Ball until you've kind of gotten a good hang of the grapple. Now, of course, we are talking base level competence. Mm-hmm. But even then, I think there's a lot of like I think there's a slight Doomfistian element to him where you have to know a bit of the rollouts, a bit of the way like the slam is going to come, you know, what angle is going to come in from, where to precisely put your grapple. So I think he's quite tricky. I think probably we've gone 2.5 with a lot of the tanks, and I think that's actually fair for Ball as well. I think there's like less decision, actually maybe 2, because there's less decision making than D.Va and Reinhardt.
I think 2.5. Simply because some of like if we're assuming base like knowing a couple of rollouts, knowing how to use your abilities, I think obviously there is some level like there's a higher level of mechanics with Ball than there are with other main tanks. Like I would say Ball is probably a little trickier mechanically at the skill floor than a Winston. Certainly more so than a Reinhardt. Probably more so than a D.Va. I just think like.
I think he is the hardest, mechanically, because it is like quite finicky. Yeah, the grappling elements.
It's just very easy to do nothing. But at the same time, I don't think that there is the level of difficulty it is to engage. I don't think that's there at the lower ranks.
Yeah.
In other words, like at a high rank, you have to be like know your matchups really, really well and position really well about that, and know whether can I slam this or can I not? Can I roll through this or can I not? I don't think Ball needs that at the lower ranks. Like you can just honestly as Ball just roll through the enemy team, rinse and repeat over and over and over again. And as long as you're not feeding, as long as you're grappling, you'll do okay. I think 2.5. I think
I think so. I think so. I think, yeah, there is a lot of bailout elements, with the shield and the speed, but
Yeah.
I still think, yeah, to know the rollouts is already in of itself an investment,
Yeah.
which is kind of what skill is, right? It's like you have to invest a bit of time to get the mastery of this hero.
Mm-hmm.
Ceiling.
Jinx. I mean, it's got to be like 3.5. I don't think it's quite as high as like a hero like Winston or D.Va necessarily. But like you have so many techs, so many rollouts. I mean, I really look at Ball and I just see Doomfist. That's all I see. I see techs. I see rollouts. I see mechanics. I see a role that's relatively basic. But then you also have to know all of your matchups as well. Not all of them, but you have to know a lot of matchups. Like how do I play against Kree? How do I play against Torb? How do I play against Tracer? Like where are the funks I need to be taking? I mean, yeah, I honestly think like it's a 3.5. Like,
yeah,
we look at like Winston and D.Va, and those heroes aren't evidently as difficult, but they're like knowing the in-depths of the hero and the metas that they play in. Very, very difficult. I think the only thing that makes Ball a little easier is the fact that he doesn't have a ton of playstyles. At least his playstyles aren't very advanced. A lot of it is just disruption and dueling, and sometimes things like point pressure and things like that. But that's basically the gist of what he does. And understanding why and how to do that isn't very hard. But actually executing on that's the hard part.
Yeah, well spoken. I think well said. I think the only thing I'd add to that is that's the reason I think you see so many Doom and Ball one tricks is that they're heroes that require a lot of time investment, and so you don't really have that time to give to other heroes. I think to like again to master the element of Ball and his rollouts, and I always think of like I'm very spoiled because I've gotten to see Yield play many times.
He's a great ball. He's a great ball.
It's just like so good, but it's so difficult as well because it's so very much like a precise rollout in a precise spot.
Yeah,
and that kind of time investment just kind of you just can't afford to give that time to other heroes. I think, which is why you see so many Ball one tricks.
Yep, I agree.
Of course, he was very strong as well, but I think that's the real main reason.
Sure.
Same for Doom, right? You have to just spend so much time understanding the intricacies of the rollouts that you just don't have time to learn all this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. My chat's flaming me for putting the same skill floor as Reinhardt.
What, they think it's too low, too high? What do they think?
Too low for Ball. But I don't know. I think like with this is where the skill floor and value floor start to bleed in. But like as Ball, it's a lot harder to feed than it is with Reinhardt, in my opinion, against a lot of situations.
Well, again, it's like you said, right? Like the play style is largely the same. The play style of Reinhardt can really radically shift depending on what he's up against. Like you really have to, and even like just the base thing of do I have a Lucio or do I not have a Lucio automatically like is a world of difference really in how you play as Reinhardt.
Yeah.
And I think for that reason that you kind of already that in itself is tricky to always recognize.
Yeah, chat. You have
in
to
the
understand
ever-shifting game Overwatch.
When we're saying skill floor, it's like playing the hero at a solid competency. We're not talking about the gold Reinhardts at AFK standing at choke with shield. That's not skill floor. That is not skill floor at all. So you have to understand that when we're saying skill floor, we're playing the hero at a base competency level, knowing your abilities, using your abilities properly, and having a proper play style. Right? You don't know all the matchups, your mechanics aren't that good, maybe you don't know all the nitty-gritty details, but like heck, like I've seen some plat Reinhardts that don't know anything, or even diamond Reinhardts that don't even know anything about like clearing high ground, right? And the fact that we've reached
Master Reinhardts,
right,
dude. Master
right,
Reinhardts.
like we've reached that rank and they still don't even understand like the basics of the hero, like that's just how it is. So like I think people get like this mindset of like, oh, I've seen this hero and it gets value at bronze. Well, that just speaks to the strength of the value floor, like which, as we saw with Reinhardt, is pretty high. Like you don't even have to reach the skill floor to be good at Ryan. You can just kind of AFK and just press W and you'll do all right. But like that's like we have to understand when we're picking a hero that you're at least trying to use all the facets of a hero. You're not successfully doing it, but you're at least trying to. Okay.
Yeah, I was in a game the other day with like it was a funny moment in my chat. There was like a Lucio in the team, and I think I was playing support as well. And the one of our tanks was like, "Oh, should I pick Reinhardt? I don't know how to play Reinhardt." And the Lucio was like, "Oh, just press W and swing, like it's easy."
Yeah.
And I was like, "You have zero idea how to play Reinhardt. You really, really have no idea."
Right. Somebody in your chat,
people just don't understand.
Yeah, somebody in your chat says, so you say that SR is no real measure of a player's skill. I mean, it is a measure of a player's skill, but you have to take that and like you have to take your SR, or like your actual skill at a hero, and then multiply it by how strong the hero is, period, right? Like we all joke about the Brig one tricks that climb like 1,000 SR when the hero was released. If you put that Brig one trick on any other hero and had that Brig one trick train the hero for like a month or two, they might be diamond or low masters, right? So they were GM with Brig, but they were largely boosted by the hero's ridiculous strengths. I look at a hero like Reinhardt. I think there's a lot of main tanks right now that are being a little bit boosted by Reinhardt. Not a lot, but a little bit. I mean, Moira, there's a lot of heroes, people like maybe early on release, but I think right now the quote unquote boosting is relatively minor. I don't think there are very many heroes right now that are so oppressively strong that if you just one trick it, you'll easily climb.
I think the SR equation is just like a whole nother thing. I don't think much of this really factors in with SR in my mind.
Yeah.
Because I actually feel like so this is my hot take, Spile.
Okay.
I think, like we said, I think the balance state is one of the best it's been. I think the matchmaking is one of the worst it's ever been. And I think that we're living in a world where consequences of like you said, several metas have come and gone and boosted people back and forth. And I think that there's a lot of people sitting in ranks that like a certain hero boosted them, and now that hero isn't strong anymore and they don't have any idea how to play. Like some people got boosted to master playing Rein or some hero, and now they don't know how to play off angle clearing Rein, right? Or high ground clearing Rein. And that's what's making these discussions complicated when you mix in SR, and we're like, I see diamond Reins and they don't even know how to clear high ground. It's like theoretically they should, but they don't, because we exist in a world where people haven't the matchmaking hasn't caught up, right?
Yeah.
You would expect a diamond level player, top 10%, to know this, but they don't.
And we're also creating a construct of an imaginary like player as well. Like a diamond Reinhardt is good at all of these things. Well, a diamond Reinhardt might not know anything about clearing high ground, but they might know they might not be like mechanically insane, right? Like they're losing a lot of games because they don't know how to clear positioning, but they're really good mechanically, so they're smack dab in diamond. So our skill floor imaginary Reinhardt, our skill floor imaginary Wrecking Ball isn't good at anything and isn't bad at anything. They're literally perfectly 50-50-50-50-50. They're the statistical anomaly, like the perfect stat, right? But there's nobody actually really there. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses that are going to be above or below the skill floor, but we're kind of approximating where we'd like to see the skill floor to be.
Exactly. Also, remember, with tanks being an underpopulated role, there's a natural boosting effect because somebody has to get to master to play with the other master, right? Master players.
Right.
So there's like the lack of player population. This is why I mean, like the SRs cause a lot of complications. Like the lack of player population has knock-on effects.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So value floor was this
deep? Yeah, sure. Go for it.
I don't remember.
If the answer is if you're not sure, the answer is yes.
Value floor. A competent ball. Decent, not skyrocket value. I think the best value you can get by ball is convincing the other team that they should spend all their time fighting you. And I think that he's probably 2.5. 2 or 2.5.
I would say 2.5. I would say 2.5. And the reason why is I don't think there's many situations where ball is bad. He's tough. He struggles a little bit against a good Sombra. Sometimes people pick Sombra just to counter ball and they have no idea what they're doing, and that's not good enough. He does struggle a little bit against heavy CC. So Flashbang's not going to stop him, but Flashbang plus Bash plus Freeze might. But he's
the chain CC, yeah.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of maps that he's bad on. There's a lot of maps that he's very good on. I think 2.5. There's not a lot of situations where a ball isn't going to be able to find. I mean, that's why he's very easily one trickable, because it's ball. Like you can play him almost anywhere. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the hero is so like survivable and flexible that you can kind of make it happen wherever.
Yeah. Ceiling. I would say probably. I want to say 3, maybe. Like meta-wise, he's not super good right now, but if you're a really good ball player, you can get a lot done, even in a meta that's not super friendly to you. I probably would say 3.
Yeah, again, I'm spoiled. Whenever I think of this, I think Yeedle, and I think this man could literally win any game. Like he could get value in any game, no matter what it is. because he's that good. And I think that's the kind of caliber of when we're talking ceiling, we're talking the world's best, ball players. And
have you ever heard of a ball player called Jihun, Korean?
No, I haven't.
Jihun. I think he's playing with New York right now. Maybe he's on an Overwatch. He was with, I think, he was with a Korean team. I think maybe Seoul's B team. I'm not sure. I would look him up. Unbelievable ball player. But yeah, they're if you have a ridiculously good ball player, it's just like you can get a lot done, And even right now, like Brawl's very meta, double bubble. Overwatch League, they're still playing ball in a couple maps. They're still playing ball.
My chat says he was on London, but now plays for the Charge.
London's B team. Guangzhou. Yeah. I got to mix up because I saw Nixel versus Guangzhou. I knew he got signed. Okay, yeah. He's on GZ right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Buffs, nerfs. What are your thoughts?
See,
while you're talking, give me a second because my laptop's about to die, so I got to plug up my power cord. I've got a scuff second monitor. Give me 1 second.
No worries. I'll ruminate on my own. I think that I know that ball players feel like the knockback nerfs hurt him, and I know Yeatle, when I had him on the rank gauntlet, he was talking about like, the knockback nerfs, man. I don't even knock anything back anymore. Honestly, I think he's okay. I think he's fine. I think he seems weak compared to how strong he has been and how like ridiculous like for the longest time everyone was like, yeah, Ball is the only good tank. Like all the other tanks are weak and suck and get deleted, and Ball's the only good one because he doesn't, and he actually has a way to fight back. But I think on balance,
okay, I'm back. Sorry.
Hey, I was just saying, like, I think a lot of ball players feel the knockback nerfs were a bit harsh, but I think that's in comparison to how strong he was, and I think on balance he's probably fine, to be honest.
I think he's fine. I think the knockback nerf was actually a good nerf to have, considering how low of a cooldown that boop was and how like abusable it was. You can do it over and over and over again. Like it makes sense that a lower cooldown boop has a lower boop value, right? And it does damage as well. Doesn't really hurt his mobility, doesn't make him unfluid. I honestly think, like, here's the deal. I think he's fine, but I'm keeping an eye on him. I'm watching you because there very well might be, like, if anything is hit with a nerf, Ball's gonna be the first tank to jump right back in meta. At least I think.
Yeah.
So I'm watching him, but I think he's fine for now.
Well, again, as I was mentioning while you were getting the power cable, is like for the longest time people were like, yeah, Ball is the only strong tank. Like the other tanks are all like being played because they're the least worst. Ball is the only one who's like, this guy's just a strong hero.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, there's still an element of that, right? Like he's still
for sure.
Very, very
for sure.
versatile and stuff.
Sure.
Fun against.
It's so tricky for me because, like, I'm probably gonna give this one a higher ranking than some players. He's not a good Ball is rough to play against for sure, but part of me is also like, he's just such a great hero. Like, I don't even play a lot of I play like no Wrecking Ball. I personally don't like him that much, but he looks so much fun, and playing, like, seeing a high level Ball player play, it's just like, it's so fluid. And like, to me, it's like when the hero came out, I remember my brother was over for the summer, and he came out and he played Overwatch with me, and we were like looking at each other like, is this a joke? Like, is this a real hero, like, in a first person shooter? Like, what? And honestly, like, I think it's pretty cool design. Like, I think it's pretty cool design. He's a lot of fun to play. Not, like I said, not my cup of tea, but like, it seems like a lot of fun to play. And I think the thing is just like the amount of booping and disruption that he does, and then obviously his ability to just solo dive you basically anywhere on the map is pretty rough. But I would, like, maybe it's not the best term to use, but people will use the term like, oh, this hero's cancer, this hero's cancer, and I think Ball is like one of the heroes that people will say, but when you compare him to a hero like Sombra or Moira, Tor, Bastion, like a lot of the unfun, anti-fun, no-skill heroes, Ball's in a position to where, he can be tough to play against, but you almost have to respect the skill when you see it, if that makes any sense.
It's like, you're right.
But yeah, what are your thoughts?
It's that element. No, I agree. It's that element. I think he's annoying, but like, at least me personally, I'm like, well, I suck at Wrecking Ball. I can't do these rollouts and shit. So like, it's not free, right? It is annoying, but it's not free. Again, this is why we bumped Roadhog up 0.5, because like the hook is obnoxious, but it's not free, right? It's not free. It's not Mora right click, Mora orb.
Yeah.
So I think he is annoying. There's definitely like losing control of your character is always annoying, right? Like in
Yeah.
Overwatch, that's why like Doomfist is really low here as well, because like just everything about him takes control of the character away from you. And it's the same element with Ball, the pile driver, the booping around. It's like it's never fun to be pushed around in the game,
Yes.
but at least it's like not obnoxious. So
Yeah.
or at least it's like at least it requires some input. So I think 2 is fair probably.
Yeah.
Like I think Orisa level, like okay, he's more annoying individually than Orisa, but at least you're like, okay, that guy plays wrecking
Right,
ball good,
right.
so fair enough.
Agreed. I think that's a good score. I would say probably like 2.1, but we're avoiding those unless we absolutely have to.
Yeah, only exceptional cases, otherwise our whole system goes out of whack.
Okay. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, the last hero
Of the entire Rate the Roll.
What is it, like 8 hours, 9 hours at least, maybe more. So here we go. Skill floor. This is you.
Skill floor. I gotta have a think of this. I never actually really thought about Zarya's skill floor because of how frequently she's picked.
She is a weird hero, isn't she? She's like so vanilla, but yeah, it's weird.
I remember all the days back. Zarya was my first ever main, like the first character I ever actually got into playing. Because I was like, at first I was like, this character's so weird. Like,
yeah,
you building charge by these bubbles. Like, what's this weird mechanic? Like, I don't want that. But then when I got a hang of it, I was like, this is so much fun. And I think that now that the game is a bit more figured out, the bubble mechanic seems no longer that complicated. But still, again, talking a competent, average imaginary player, timing the bubbles right is something I see a lot of people get wrong. Like people just like what I call greedy bubble, right? They just like bubble off cooldown. And they never have it for when their other, players actually need it. But and there's a good mechanical element to Zarya.
Yeah.
But I still think less than D.Va. So although we're kind of cop out and there's a lot of 2s, I think 2 is probably fair. What do you think?
So for me, it's weird because I look at Zarya and I'm like, positionally wise, she's one of the easier tanks. Like, you don't want to stand right behind your Reinhardt 24/7, but you can get away with it as opposed to like a Sigma or a D.Va or a Roadhog. But there is the mechanical aspect of things as well. Her ultimate is really strong. Like, I'm so split in 2 and 2.5. I'm so split in 2 and 2.5.
Well, would you say she's harder to access than D.Va or less or the same?
I honestly feel like she's a little easier.
That's my thinking too. That's why I would go 2.
Yeah.
She's probably is a little bit harder than Roadhog, for example.
Zarya best tank.
But and Orisa too, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's a chance to cheat and go 2.25, but
yeah, it would be just off of mechanics.
I think I think 2 is fair.
Yeah.
I think 2 is fair.
Yeah.
She's a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah.
It's why you can also see it's why you also see a lot of DPS players just like roll up and play Zarya pretty well because
yeah,
that whole decision-making element isn't quite there that some of the other tanks have to deal with.
And again, we have to keep in mind that again we're talking skill floor, so like a base level of competency. If I think it would take a little longer to grasp the basics of D.Va than it would be to grasp the basics of Zarya. Certainly, it's easier for me to coach the basics of Zarya than it is for D.Va. Okay. Ceiling, I would say. I mean, honestly, actually not all that high. Like, I think compared to other tank lines here, probably a 2.5. Like, I'm looking back.
Yeah.
Like 2.5 or maybe a 3, and that's again just off of the mechanical aspect of things. Like, because I would say she's definitely harder than a Hog, but I don't know that she's as hard as a Sigma.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. It's like, I think mechanically Sigma demands just about maybe even a little bit more because it's actually more like with Zarya, it's like I'm aiming, but like with Sigma, there's also like you're shooting your projectiles, and then you go like your rocket has a different speed and trajectory and everything.
Yeah.
So like hitting those things is more difficult.
Yeah, I think the thing that's tricky with me, and I'm a little bit unsure on, is I'm thinking more low with her because the demand on learning your role in the meta is a lot lower than there are with a hero like a Sigma, but even more so a Diva and a Monkey, like we talked about, like knowing what you're supposed to do. Zarya is pretty straightforward. Even in double bubble, her role like is very important. You need to get the basics down and not scuff up anything, but it's not like you have to entirely learn a different way of like playing. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's like a few core concepts, I think, and once you understand them, it's like that's it. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you understand these concepts, you can fit Zarya everywhere.
Yeah. I think 2.5 would probably be a fair score. She's not easy to pick up, but like I'm comparing her. I mean, Ana. I mean, I'd definitely say BAP is probably a little higher in the ceiling. And I've reviewed a lot of Pro Zarya before, and a lot of the mistakes are generally okay, just like a miscommunication here, or like I messed up my graph there, or very rare. Yeah, there's not a ton of stuff like when compared to other tanks.
I agree. I think, someone might look at like, oh my god, Orisa and Zarya, the same, skill, ceiling, and floor stats. But I think that's actually fair. The more I think about it, the more I think new Orisa, yeah, it's like a similar level, like of intricacy. Like Orisa, Zarya has more mechanics probably, but Orisa has like these decision-making elements to make that aren't the same for Zarya.
Yeah. And I think positioning with Zarya is the easiest of the off tanks, with the exception of maybe Roadhog.
Yes, yeah.
But I think it's
it's about similar. Yeah, it's just slightly harder than Roadhog, I'd say.
Yep. Okay.
Value floor. I think again a competent Zarya. So I'm imagining if I got with Zarya, we can actually put a number on it, right? With Zarya, if I'm imagining a Zarya who's sitting in like on fights that aren't lost, like 60 charge generally, right? Like somebody who's high charge isn't just like doing dumb shit. Is saving a decent amount of bubbles at least for the right occasions. You're gonna get value. I think you're gonna get a lot of value. Like the bubbles are like near guaranteed value as long as you don't fuck them up.
Yeah.
And the damage output is very high.
I mean, I would say I'm not don't think, but I wouldn't be against even like a 3.5. Probably
I was gonna go high. Yeah.
Just because like it's like if you're decent at the hero, there's a couple maps where she's not gonna feel great. Jungertown, things like that. But if you can reach enemies and you have the base competency, she's just consistently going to be easier to do stuff with. And the grav is just like monstrously strong. Like it's very like I hate the term carry hero, but like if you're a good Zarya, you will I think that's be a consistent hero. She's very consistent. You can lose a bunch of fights, you'll still have a graph. If you can build charge and use a graph, you'll win the fight. So I would probably say maybe not 3.5, but definitely a 3.
I think 3 is probably reasonable. I think 3.5. Yeah. See, I think she's probably slightly more than Rein, in the sense that she has that again carry, quote unquote carry potential. Like Zarya is one of the few heroes I can think of that can legitimately 1v whatever number an entire team, right? Like a high charge Zarya, you grab people, you can just like you can kill an entire team.
Yeah.
But of course that is partly ceiling, but I think that factors in.
Yeah.
3 is fair probably.
Sure.
I think 3 is fair.
Sure. Okay. Value ceiling. Well, what do you? Let me get my thoughts here then. I think value ceiling right now is relatively high, but I do think it's a little lower. Well, let's just put it on par with Diva because she can. She's a little less flexible than Diva in terms of what comp that she can play, but in terms of like actually consistently getting value, probably. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I would probably say 3 because she's a staple in double bubble, and she's playable, very playable in brawl as well. But I don't think that she's a particularly like really strong hero. So I would say definitely not 3.5. Maybe 2.5. I'm unsure on this one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards 3 because I think that while again those concerns you point out are very, very true. I think she's at least a strong ladder hero as well, and I don't know
Sure.
how much consideration we're gonna give that, but I do
I
think
mean,
that
it's something, yeah.
you can kind of just like roll up with Zarya and frag out kind of thing
Sure. Sure.
at all times.
Sure.
I think for that reason, maybe I'd think 3.
Sure. That's fair.
Okay, let's go with 3 then. Buffs, nerfs. Now, I mean, looking at these, you might think, well, she's getting a bit too much value considering her skill, floor and ceiling. But again, maybe we're just becoming very, very passive, but I don't really think she needs much of a change, to be honest.
I mean, Sigma is not very strong right now. Diva is very hard to play, and Hog is just kind of trash. So that kind of puts her in a position to where she's like the only like, hey, this off tank isn't that bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, play it at the base floor. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like why, like, it's like the same kind of argument where, like, people are like, oh, Wrecking Ball's OP, but people are like, well, he's the only playable tank right now. Right now, it's like we said, Diva's very tricky to play, Hog is bad, and Sigma's not very good either, and also very difficult to play. Not very difficult, but more difficult to play. So maybe it's not so much that Zarya is too strong right now, so much as that she's a little favored by the meta, for sure. But she's also she's inoffensive, you know? She's decent, she'll do all right. I don't think that'll, and there's so few tanks right now that I hesitate to do much.
I also think she benefits from the whole long history of everybody knows Ryan Zarya. I actually wonder,
Yeah,
this is a sudden thought that came into my head. If Zarya was released like now or at Sigma time, I think she'd be played a lot less. I think people would be like, why would I pick this hero? Like, she can't do anything with the high ground.
Yeah, true.
You know, like, I think a lot of people, because they understand now, I think
yeah, that's true.
they get more out of her.
Yeah, that's true. She is very quintessential Reinhardt King's Row, build the big grav dragon kind of a thing. Yeah, that's another thing to consider with the value floor as well, is like how easy it is to combo with grav. I mean, it seems like in lower ranks, that's all people want to do is can we just combo grav? That's all I know how to do. But yeah, that's true. I think leave her at 0.
Yeah, I think so.
Fun against.
I
mean, let's just immediately compare it to tanks. Funner than Diva. I mean, probably about the same. Maybe a little. Definitely more fun than Orisa. A little less fun than Reinhardt, maybe. Definitely more fun than Hog. Definitely more fun than Sigma. Less fun than Winston. More fun than Ball. Probably a 3.
Yeah.
Probably a 3. Grav is a little annoying. Bubbles are a little annoying. I think bubbles are a little annoying. And like, for me, it's like there's no way to have a perfectly fun hero, because bubbles are annoying for the very same reason that they're helpful, because they stop the Doomfist from one-shotting your backline. You know, you're like, oh, come on, man, I just got screwed over by a bubble. Are you serious? But like, without that, then the unfun heroes are even more unfun. So I don't know. Like, there's nothing about Zarya is particularly offensive, to be honest. But there's nothing about her that really strikes me as like, oh, that was fun. Like, that was well played, Zarya. Like, I honestly like have a hard time. Maybe it's just me, but like when I'm playing up against a good Zarya, like sometimes I don't even notice all that much. Maybe it's just because I'm playing support. But like I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that Zarya just has grav again. But like, I'm not even really tracking. Like, I'm not seeing the hooks. I'm not seeing, you know, the assassinations or the big slams. That she just kind of exists, and there it is. So very inoffensive hero, I think.
Yeah, the only thing that's annoying about Zarya in my book is when people don't kill a high charge Zarya. Like, if I ever find myself frustrated, I'm always like, please God, that Zarya is sitting on 100 energy and she's just fucking us in every mid fight. Can you please kill her and take her charge away?
Yep.
It's like if you take her charge away, suddenly it's like a reset, and no longer a threat. So.
Yep, that's true. That's true. A high charge Zarya is oppressive. So, what are your thoughts? I'm thinking 2.5 or 3.
I think either 2.5 or 3 for me. I'm just wondering if she's more annoying than Diva. Diva has the annoyingness of the DM.
Yep. Yep.
Zarya doesn't really have that, but then, yeah, she can be more oppressive, I suppose, generally than a Diva. Diva's oppressive to certain heroes. I guess Zarya can be just kind of generally strong, but I think 3 is probably reasonable, to be honest.
3 seems like the middle ground.
I think so too. I don't think really anyone's like, oh God, I hate Zarya's. Like, I hate coming up against Zarya's.
Okay, quick reevaluation then. Diva, skill floor 2.5.
Should we do by category? So like check all the skill floors.
Yeah, let's do that.
Against
skill
each
floor
other.
2.5, Orisa 2, Ryan 2. Oh, I think Diva. Maybe you can make an argument for like 2.8 on skill floor.
I was gonna say, yeah, maybe we could
That
bump
seems
it
a
to
little low.
3. I
Or
think
3. Yeah, yeah. That seems a little low for skill floor for Diva.
Yeah, if Winston's 3.5, I think Diva's probably harder than Ryan or Sigma to get into, right?
Sure, sure. That seems fair.
Okay, so let's bump that to 3.
Orisa 2.
Yeah.
Ryan 2.5. Sure. Skill floor. Orisa and Hog have the same skill floor. I mean, yeah. I like if there's no immediate red flags here, I think like we keep going.
Yeah, it's not egregious.
Yeah, it's not egregious. 3.5. Same skill floor for Ball and Sigma.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Seems reasonable
Yeah,
to me.
that seems fair.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. They have their own mechanical intricacies.
Zarya and Hog, yeah, I think so as well. And the only reason is like even though you might describe some of the intricacies of Zarya that are definitely harder than Hog, like understanding her base role is just pretty straightforward. Like you can almost actually like it's like I'm more likely to see lower and mid range Zarya just kind of accidentally doing the right thing more often than I mean even in Diamond you still see Hogs frontlining, you know. Like teammate that just tells me that like it's easier to accidentally do the right thing as Zarya. So I guess it's easier to accidentally do the skillful thing. Like even bubbles, like you could probably figure out that was a bad bubble, I got no charge, or that was a bad bubble, you know, I didn't protect who I was supposed to go for. Grab is, you know, pretty straightforward. So I think Zarya is fine at 2.
Yeah, my chat is saying it's kind of like, oh, Diva higher skill floor than Ball, and I would say probably yes. I think there is, I mean, there's an argument. I wouldn't, if anything, I would bump Ball up, not bump Diva back down, because I think that to get the skill floor of Diva, it requires a knowledge level that can only come by a lot of playtime. Like you have to understand the game really smartly to get that skill floor access of Diva. Whereas Ball, I think, given enough like mechanical practice, you're there.
Yep. I think the other thing too is that like people look at Ball and they're instantly like, oh, mechanics, crazy roll, zoom, you know. And I think, like you said, to an extent, I think we define skill flow as knowing it. It's the important ones, but like you don't have like skill flow doesn't include knowing or mastering anything close to all of that. It's just having the base competency. And when you consider that, like Diva has to know so much more about positioning and know more about like what her role is than Ball is. Like Ball is a little more one-dimensional on the floor, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you have to like note like it's not as important on Ball to have your target priority, for example, than as Diva, right? And that's something that always changes. Like in whatever the comp you're in, the comp you're up against, if they switch, if you know if the meta changes, like these things heavily affect how you play Diva. Whereas like again, Ball, you do your rollouts, you're good.
Sure.
You know, like there's intricacy, but we're talking floor here, so.
Yeah. Okay. Ceiling.
Okay.
Forward
Ceiling Diva. I don't have any qualms with Diva being. I've long maintained she's one of the hardest heroes in Overwatch. Reset 2.5. Ryan slightly higher on 3. Hog lower on 2. I think that's only because Diva, like Orisa's role is kind of so shifting now, and she's not the shield bot she once was.
Yeah, and I mean it's still mechanics. There's still halt. There's still cooldown management.
3 on Sigma higher. Yeah, that's fair. Winston again. We spoke about how difficult it is to get Winston right. Skill ceiling Ball. We gave for those rollouts and the techs and all the little niche things you have to do. We gave that the 3.5.
Yeah, for sure.
And Zarya 2.5. Yeah, I don't. And again, I don't see any red flags. Do you?
No, not particularly. Okay, value floor, and well, let's see. Yeah, it seems fine to me.
So we got 2.5. Yeah, I think you'd get more value at playing, a base level competent Orisa than Diva.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. Yeah, Reinhardt, we know how much value you get from Big German Man, just generally existing.
Yeah.
Hog again. If you're landing a competent amount of hooks, yeah, you're gonna get value. And yeah, chat again, skill ceiling on Sigma 3 because remember he's not as tricky and sort of difficult to understand as a Diva, whereas like we spoke about it. Like the meta shifts, and your playstyle Sigma doesn't necessarily shift that much.
Yeah, the
Diva
positional
absolutely
nuances. The positional nuances are way heavier in Diva than they are with Sigma as well.
Yeah, yeah. So value floor 2.5. Yeah, I think Sigma's is he about the same as Hog? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, probably.
Value floor Winston lower. Yeah, I think so. I think you'd get, even in a base competence, you're probably better off on Hog, right? And Ball, yeah, I think a slightly better version of Winston if you're not playing him perfect, I think is fair.
Mm-hmm.
And then Zarya 3. What do you think?
That looks fair to me so far. So far, so good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ceiling value?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here.
3 on Diva. Again, because she's got a good place in the meta right now. Again, she's inching back towards the she fits everywhere model.
Yeah. I'm almost at like 3.1. but again, I'm not like, if it's a 3.1, it's rounded down to 3 anyway, I guess. But definitely on the higher end for 3 potentially.
Yes, yeah. Orisa, yeah, we spoke about. She's kind of just left to dry a little bit. Same with Roadhog. There's no real guaranteed reason to pick them. But Reinhardt, yep, there's a lot of ceiling to be had. Sigma, Winston, same. Sigma a little bit lower again, a little bit out of meta, a little bit awkward spot. Ball, again, a good ball player gets value. And Zarya, good Zarya gets value. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Zarya a little lower in the ceiling just because a little less flexible with what she can play with.
Yeah. I guess someone might look at the Ryan 3.5, but I think that's more probably a case of his overstrength a little bit, right? Like with the damage, meta. I think that's what is bumping this up. I think if we nerf the damage down 0.5, I think the ceiling will go down as well.
Sure. He's just very strong right now on a lot of maps, meta stuff. So, okay.
Yeah.
Buffs, nerfs. I mean, this one's pretty much fine. Like, I think Reinhardt's slight maybe damage nerf. We talked about how Hog is just in an awkward spot right now. Sigma maybe make him a little more fluid, but maybe not overall buff him. I think it's mostly, except for Ball, just kind of keep an eye on like how he does in the future, because he's probably the one on like on the edge where it could go either way. But
yeah.
Okay.
And then fun against.
Diva's definitely more fun than Orisa. Reinhardt's more fun than Diva. Hog is less fun than Orisa, sure. Sigma is as fun as Orisa.
Well, it's more like Orisa is less unfun than some other people. Like that's what it is. It's not even that it's a fun thing, right? It's
right.
Like Orisa's inoffensive.
Right. Winston, Ball is as unfun as Sigma. I don't know. What do you think about Sigma being higher than 2? Because I look at Orisa and I look at Ball and I'm like, maybe Sigma's not so bad.
Yeah, 2.5. I think 2.5 would be fair.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anyone would be that complaining about Ball, especially when we factor in what we said. Like
no.
If a Sigma picks you off, it's probably out of a good skill, right? You probably landed a good shot.
I think Sigma is also victimized a little bit by the Brig mentality, where people are honestly a little bit of Orisa as well, where people just, we hate Sigma, he's so busted, double shield, 1500 shield, but that's long gone. Like that's so long ago. He's got less than half of the shield HP that he used to have. Not to mention the casting animation. So like a lot of people have like this stigma with Sigma that I don't think is entirely accurate anymore.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's about fair. And then Zarya 3, because I don't really think people hate Zarya in any way. No. Again, it's that bonus of like everybody loves Ryan Zarya being run most of the time.
Right. Exactly. Okay, is that it?
That is it.
Holy moly.
Let me have a look at the overview. This is the overview chat. Chat was asking for an overview of everything, so.
Okay, sure.
I'm just gonna show them the big list. I don't think we'll run through it because it'll take forever.
Yeah.
But Here's a bigger. Let me make this a little bit easier to see.
Yeah, see, you're way ahead of me. You can't even. Let's see here. View, grid view. Would that do it? Ah,
Yeah. There's that little view button at the
nice.
bottom.
I did it. Okay.
Here you go, chat. Here it is. So
Brilliant.
should we do like the highest of everything? So the like
Sure.
the characters we think are like the highest of everything.
Let's do skill for.
So lowest Bastion, which I think is fair. I think to get the value out of Bastion's kit is pretty straightforward.
Yep. Bastion and Moira were the two ones that stood out for sure.
Yeah, more and you know,
1.
even Mercy a little
1.25.
bit low because again.
Yep. Okay, and then skill floor for highest Doomfist Genji. For Doomfist Genji, let's
Yeah.
see here. Sombra, Widowmaker,
Tracer
Tracer.
the highest.
Let's see here. Yeah, Tracer for sure, the highest. Winston. He's hardest to pick up
Yeah,
and master, like get the basics of.
Yeah, I can remember to a base level comp. This isn't like I never played Overwatch before. What should I play?
Right.
It's like to get to be competent at this hero. What does it take?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it takes a lot of hours on these heroes that we have
Yeah.
rated highly. At least
Yeah.
I feel, anyways.
I agree. All right, you want
Okay,
to do
skill
ceiling?
ceiling. Okay, so what we got? Lowest Bastion again. Is there really that much intricacy to it? I mean, it's that I think we gave him the extra 0.5 because like to actually get maximum value, you need to do some dumb
Yeah,
shit.
and the ultimate as well.
But-
His ultimate actually takes
Yes.
a decent amount of skill.
But other than that, it's like to really play Bastion, you're kind of
Man, we
It's
put
pretty-
Symmetra down low too, and Moira.
yeah. Maybe Symmetra could be a little bit higher, but yeah, I think it's just
Yeah.
like
The thing
it's
is,
that
just-
all,
yeah, because I'm thinking like again like pro metas here, and how Symmetra is played in pros is fairly one dimensional. Occasionally TP bombing, some cheeky TPs every now and then, but mostly it's just like kind of like aim your secondary fire and primary on shields, and there's not a lot of playstyle adjustment.
yeah, it's like it's one of those funny things where if you bump what you're trying to do with the hero, it also remember you're going up against better opposition. So like the TP bombs won't work at Owl, like they
Yeah.
won't work in contenders because people aren't so blind as to ignore them.
Right.
Um,
Moira low in the skill ceiling, big surprise there. not a lot to the hero.
yeah, I think looks reasonable. I think someone might say we're biased because none of the tanks have too low skill ceiling, but I think the reason I would put forward that is that with tanking, there's a lot of like decision making that isn't necessarily as shifting on other heroes.
Yeah. Well, they're played in metas
Like-
like more friendly, and honestly, like even I bet like I wouldn't. I'm not gonna type these up and find out the average, but I do feel like I mean, we have Diva with a 4, Orisa's a 2.5. That's not low. Ryan 3, Sigma 3, Winston 4, 3.5 with Ball. Like they're, I think on average, I think tanks might actually be on par or even a little higher. Well, yeah, right on par maybe. Because there are a lot of DPS with higher skill ceilings. I think it's just because the raw mechanics that every DPS can provide potentially, or a lot of the DPS can.
No, I was saying that they're like we don't have any tanks as low skill ceiling really. Like the lowest is Roadhog at 2.
Well, yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's because there's just so much. Oh, I completely misunderstood you. There's just like there's so many little things that you have to balance, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. Is like it's just like even if you figure out the hero, the meta shifts, and now your playstyle might have to shift completely.
Right.
Whereas like that doesn't often happen for DPS. Like DPS again, like I was alluding to earlier, it's a lot of like, is this the strongest DPS right now? Yes, no. Okay, I'll just play him then.
Right.
That's
right.
kind of generally the flow chart.
Right. Okay.
So value floor Bastion again. I think that's more out of like the disproportionate amount of floor you would get from
Yeah.
picking Bastion.
Yeah.
Although probably that looks a bit silly because I think that's like one of the first ones we did. So that probably is a little bit high compared to some of the other stuff we've
It's
done.
a
But
little high.
that's speaking.
Yeah, it's a little high,
Go ahead.
but we're not. Yeah. Because and the reason why it's so high though is because look at his skill floor. He's so very easy to pick up that you can be like a gold Bastion and getting a huge chunk of the hero's mastery. And if you're in high silver playing up against a Bastion, that has any idea of what he or she's doing, that's going to be a bad day. So I think it's like
They've had many of those.
right, when you have such a low skill floor, it is very easy to get a high value floor because you can pick up all the aspects of the hero almost instantly. Like I'm looking right now at some of the other low skill floor heroes. I mean, look at Reaper, right? 1.5 in the skill floor. What's his value for? 3.5, right? Because it doesn't take, and the inverse is true for Widowmaker. 3.5 skill floor, 1.5 value floor. There's like an inverse relationship. Same thing with Winston. 3.5 skill floor, 2 value floor. So I think that's actually the interesting little phenomena that we see is that like there's often an inverse. Same thing with Moira, 1.25 and 3. There's like an inverse relationship, skill floor to value floor a lot of the time.
Yes, yeah. What's funny, I just realized that like I think when we did this is before the Reaper buffs.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, minus 0.5 nerf, and then it's like it's going the other way.
Yeah.
And now he's like a slightly better hero.
Yeah. Yeah. Slightly more flexible for sure.
Yes, yeah. More versatile. He's not as obnoxious in the way he was, but I think he's better overall.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that.
Value ceiling. Poor Bash. Bashman we're always coming to because he just really is the outlier of Overwatch, I think.
He is a freak. He and Moira, I don't know what they're doing in this game. Yeah. Value ceiling. This is obviously a little outdated, but this is when Echo was a little bit more oppressive and more popular than she is now. She's still not bad, but very strong was at the time. Very, very good in the meta. Tracer 4, 3.5 for Widow.
Yeah, because it's like very hard to contain these heroes, right? Like when played well, it's very hard to contain them, even if like the meta isn't super favorable.
Yeah. We started putting asterisks around the supports as well. Like you look at Mercy had a 3 with an asterisk. Mercy right now is not very good at the ceiling, at least on a lot of maps, because a lot of maps you're playing Brawl and you can't play Mercy in Brawl. At least, I mean, if you, at least in the high ranks, you need a Lucio, you need a BAP, you need an Ana, you need a Moira, something like that. You need speed, and if you try and play Brawl without speed, you're gonna have a bad time.
With Mercy, it's horrible. I know this from experience.
Yeah, because you're not.
Also, the BAP is the lamp diff is very strong right now.
Yep. What are you gonna damage boost? Like your Diva, like your Reinhardt? It's not enough value. There's nowhere for Mercy to go either. Like in Brawl, like if she gets rushed down, like where does she go? Like the off angles are always very tight, very small. Nowhere that a Lucio or enemy Diva can't chase you down. And that's problematic. So
yeah,
I don't know.
This is the consequence of us having.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna make a quick. This is the consequence of us having done this over an extended period of time. So like the meta has actually slightly shifted in middle of all this. But go on.
Yep. I was just gonna say it's funny that like I feel fairly confident about a lot of these values as being like, okay, these aren't 100% accurate, but like I feel like this is a pretty good snapshot. But it's funny how like I feel like it's funny how like the more I look at this, the less I'm confident that this is absolutely it. Like we went into this with at least a base level of humility of like, this is just an opinion. And the more I look at this, the more I'm like, man, we really don't have any idea. Like this is just a pretty good idea, but this is not. We could be so wrong on some of these. I don't think anybody will ever know.
I'm almost certain I'm very wrong on most things, to be honest. But
isn't that like the thing?
I mean, we gave it our shot. We gave it a shot.
The more you know, the more you know that you just don't know anything. What is that like the concept there?
The wise man knows. That he knows nothing. I think is the Socratian.
Yeah.
Phrase. I don't know.
There's some like humility here. It's like I feel like we gave a pretty good snapshot. I think a lot of better snapshots than a lot of other people are. But I still feel like there's a lot. Like if we went over this again, I have a feeling that every character would have been micro adjusted, and next week if we did it again, it'd be micro adjusted again, and that would still just be an opinion, and we'd still be changing it. But yeah.
Well, we're biased as well, right? That's the other thing is like we're biased by our experiences, and there's like we will encounter like one particular day we might be playing and we see a lot of like X hero and we're like, oh god, this hero is so obnoxious, or like you might be looking at a pro VOD one day and you're like, shit, everyone's playing this now. Right. Like this is so good now.
Right.
And suddenly your opinion shifts.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. I think fun against. Bastion.
Bastion, Doom. I think
Sombra.
Farah maybe was a little low, but I think that we were including console as well.
I think that the unfun element of Farah is like sometimes the lack of counter ability for
That's
a
true.
certain
That's
section
true.
of people.
She does feel as if sometimes like you have like she's one of the few heroes where like somebody has to counter this hero. Whereas some hero like there's a lot of heroes in the Overwatch cast where you don't really feel like here's the thing, like Farah, you don't have to counter her directly with hit scan, but a lot of times it certainly feels like you have to. And there's not many heroes in Overwatch that give you that feeling. Like maybe like Ball sometimes, maybe like a Bastion.
I think Widow is another one of these
sure.
where it's like, oh well, somebody please stop this dude from free farming.
Yeah. Okay. Sombra was really low, unsurprising. Sombra is just awful. I'm working on a write-up on Sombra right now, to post tomorrow about like how to engage properly with Sombra, because it grieves me how much agony playing into and with a Sombra. She's simultaneously the most annoying hero, yet you also don't even want her on your team. Like, please don't play. She's not even that bad right now at the top level. She's an okay hero right now, but like, holy cow, like, is D.Va, Sombra not very misunderstood heroes, and it hurts.
Yeah, that's actually the thing. Right? It's like, if would I trust a player in my team to play D.Va or Sombra competently? Probably not, right?
No.
That's the thing. It's like, ideally, like a good one of these players is Nightmarish, but like, would I trust someone on my team to play them well? No.
No. She's very tricky. She's infamous as well, and like even at the pros, like oh yeah, this guy can play Kree, Ashe, Tracer. Can he play Sombra? No. I mean, there's even been like pretty big name Overwatch League trades where people would actually go out of their way to trade for a Sombra player. Whether that was really necessary or not, but it's just amusing that of all like Tracer specialists, Sombra specialists, Winston specialists, there's only a couple heroes in the game where you can say that people were signed for that position, and Sombra is definitely one of them.
Yes. Yeah. I can think of RCK off the top of my head being transferred to Dallas for this reason.
Yep.
Yeah, and who's the most fun we said? I think we said Reinhardt, Zarya's high, Tracer's
Winston.
high, Ana's high.
Yeah.
I think people will probably want Ana bumped lower because of the anti-nade effect, but
yeah.
I think people like Ana.
Yeah. She's relatively inoffensive, and a lot of her abilities are skill based, which makes it a little less frustrating. But she definitely has very like nade and sleep are really strong, but very skill based as well. So it's like kind of it's like the Ball quandary, But I would say it's even harder than Ball.
Yes, yeah. I think also certain heroes, like there's something to be said about an inexplainable affection that the community has, right?
Yeah.
Like, people have an affection for Ana, they have an affection for Ryan Zarya.
Yeah.
And how much of that is based on objectivity is, impossible to say, right? It's just like, well, they like these heroes.
Yeah. True.
And yeah, Zenyatta. All right, well that's.
Wow. Well,
how do you feel about after all that?
I don't know. I feel like we did an all right job. I think it was a lot of work. I'm unironically glad to be done with it, but I honestly am very glad we did it at the same time. It's like, it's like if you have like, have you ever had like a hard day of physical labor and you're like, man, I feel like trash, but that was like satisfying to do. That's kind of like where we're at right now. At least that's where I'm at. But I really appreciate you coming on and doing this with me. Because this was quite. So was it just like, hey, you want to come on and do an interview? Like, no, you wanted to commit like 11 hours of stream time. So very generous of you to do this.
No, I mean, I'm delighted that you asked, and I know my chat has enjoyed it, so it's not like I wasn't getting good content out of it. So thank you very much for coming up with the idea, for inviting me, and then sticking with me, because it was originally like maybe I'll just do one row with you, but. Yeah, we went through all of them.
We went through all of them. And we got it done just in time. No major patches, really. Just most days. I mean,
thank God.
A couple of things for sure, but nothing crazy. Nothing that's going to make us like completely change all our scores entirely. Yeah. Okay. Are you continuing streaming?
I am. My chat is asking, how can we get this list? Are you going to give like So first of all, guys, if you want to watch any of these back, Spylo's put them on his YouTube, or this one will go on YouTube as well. So
Yes.
look out for that. But are you going to be posting like a finalized version of this list anywhere, or would you want to
like? How would I do that? Like on Reddit, Overwatch
maybe like
University? I don't even know.
yeah, maybe like host like get a image version of this hosted on Imgur or Imager or something.
Sure.
Put it in a link somewhere.
Sure, maybe we'll do that. Maybe I'll throw it on Twitter or something like that.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So you can like click on the link there or something. But okay, yeah, something like that. We'll get something up. But again, you guys can check it out on the YouTube for sure. But you are continuing streaming.
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I'm gonna
sick.
go to the bathroom because I really need it, and then I'm gonna play some ladder, and I'm gonna try the
Sick.
Orisa horse.
Sick. Good luck with that. Well, I'm gonna actually call it, so I'm gonna toss you host then. But
Oh,
first
thank you
off,
very much,
Thank
man.
you for. I appreciate you coming on stream, brother. And I guess I'll just keep in touch. Good luck with the the Orisa grind.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. I think she's pretty beefy. I'm actually excited. I actually had fun playing Orisa yesterday, which was unusual.
Sick.
But yeah, thanks, man. And let's keep in touch. We'll do something else soon and keep putting out the great content. Like I actually watch your content unironically, so that's not something
that's flattering.
I do for a lot of content creators. Like I actually find Spylo's stuff to be very informative because honestly, I don't have the time nor the real desire to keep up with like the highest tier Overwatch. But when I watch Spylo's content, I feel much more informed. So
awesome. Well,
check him out,
appreciate
guys.
that.
There's a command in there, so check it out. Check out his content. It's real good.
Well, thank you so much, and I guess I will be hosting you in just a second then. Good luck in the
Yeah,
bathroom.
peace out, man. Thanks.
The
I
best
hope it goes
outro.
well. Yeah, thanks.
Have a
Peace
good
out,
one.
man. Have a
Same
good day.
You too. All right, so that was Mr. SVB, brilliant content creator, good buddy of mine. We're gonna be tossing him host a little bit of a shorter stream. So here's the deal, guys. Just before we cut stream short. So thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate this. This was a big project. But tomorrow another short stream. So today was short stream. Tomorrow's a short stream. I have a lot of stuff going on today and tomorrow. I have a lot of VODs to catch up on. Tomorrow we're going to be grinding as many VODs as we can get done in about 3 hours. But on Monday, nice haircut, thank you. On Monday, I have normal IRL stuff on Monday evening that is not going to be there. So that means that there's going to be a lot of streaming on Monday, probably another 5.5 hour stream, similarly to Wednesday. So stick around. We're going to be catching up on a lot of VODs on Monday, as well as tomorrow as well. So tomorrow, shorter stream, but we'll be making up for it on Monday with a long stream. So is somebody in chat accidentally cashed in points for an insult? Booty X Monster, if it's Booty X Monster in chat, Booty X Monster, I don't know if you're in chat still, but I wanted to give you a farewell insult before we host SVB. Let's see here. I've got one here. Okay. Your parents probably told you that you were adopted because they didn't want to be held responsible. So there you go. I know it was accidental, but you know the points were cashed in, so I have a responsibility. All right, you guys have a wonderful night. I will see you guys tomorrow. Probably if we are streaming tomorrow, it will be very early in the morning for EST, so it'll be about not very early, but like 10:30 a.m. So I will see you guys tomorrow, most likely. Spylo out.